Yeah, let's break the stream. Don't worry, it's fine.
No, no, it's good. It's good.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
So today we're doing the DM roundtable while we wait for Jacob.
Even then, we'll still probably, just talk. See what's on our minds. See what are things to discuss.
Yes.
Like, what's the first thing you design when you think of a campaign? Where do you
Uh,
start?
I mean, it's for me. It starts with, am I doing a pre-con world or my homebrew world?
Hmm,
uh,
reasonable.
yeah, but otherwise, my first goal is always what goals the characters have in mind, followed by creatures, and then I kind of fit the arena, so to speak.
Hmm. Oh wow, you consider the player's goals. That's admirable.
Thanks.
I mean, that's nice.
No, no, it's just for some reason the very first thing with most of my campaigns is this is a cool final boss.
Yeah,
All right, how do
exactly
they
like
get
Anne said.
there?
Gotta check where I want to be on the horror to emotional scale.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, that's actually something that I'm wondering about is if you have a bunch of players and they are wildly different on that scale of how like what they want. Like how at what point do you do like, yeah, this is not gonna work out?
um,
Or like how
so
much do you wrangle people in?
part of that is something that you kind of cover in session zeros. Um,
Mhm.
the exception for like this group was because I had DM'd for all of you at least once before. Um, and so the session zeros, instead of like the full experience, mostly came down to, do you like playing the character and how do you play your character, while establishing part of the backstory. Um, however, like, let's say I were to pick some random person from like another server, add them to the campaign, I'd have to do a session zero, figure out like what all they're okay with, what they're all comfortable with, talk about that exact thing of, well, how much do you want to like feel versus like get spagoodled because this is a
Like Goodle.
yeah, spagoodled.
Yes,
That's
the
my
good
word.
old.
Because this is meant to be more of a horror themed thing. Um, and like eventually, even though it may not start horror, it will always at least touch on it or take a dive into it at some point.
I was
And
gonna say,
so,
oh,
oh
oh, go
sorry,
ahead.
I was
No,
gonna
go
say
ahead.
because like with the exception of Jacob, because I have unfortunately for him targeted his top three fears in the first three things that
Oh,
I did for him. You can ask and um,
okay.
I accidentally targeted his top three fears without knowing. um, but like,
And I'm stealing that.
getting spagoodled.
Thank you.
I'm glad my phrase is.
Oh boy. I was gonna say horror really depends because usually I don't go into a campaign with horror in mind, but that's because I'm all Mr. High fantasy. Let's go do something. Well, not high fantasy, high adventure. Let's go do
Mm.
something. Let's go save the world. Let's go battle this thing. Occasionally there's got to be spooks of some sort just to kind of set a mood depending on where you go. I think my favorite one didn't even involve a character I made because timelines branched at some point. I used a friend's homebrew world and then just said, bad guy won, but you guys are in the future now. So I got to use another player character who's made of bugs.
Ugh,
And occasionally,
I
and
hate it.
oh, he's great. His name's Charade, and he just wears a clown mask all the time. So I took that, kind of cranked the clown up to 11 and put him in charge of a jail, kind of put it super jail-esque, and voila, the mood sets itself. And when the players saw him, it was, how many alchemist fires do we have?
Gay
All of
baby
them.
jail.
Just all of them. Use them. It's like crap. I like it, but crap.
That's fair.
Oh, jeez. No.
Actually, one thing that I was thinking, I was contemplating in my head before, But one thing that we could do, um, for days where someone is missing, aside from obviously the DMs of the round table type deal, um, is we stay like in the world, right? But we rotate like who DMs, you know?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, it's a side mission or something.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So like
I,
like you like any of you could
Cervoli Island, baby.
Queer panic.
That was just an island in the world, but it became the name for the whole campaign because that was my first. That was my first time, I think, DMing a campaign just DMing a campaign in general. Oh yeah, and deep thought in that, not that campaign, but not the one I ran, sadly, but the one that was spawned that world. Basically, may or may not have given him a spider phobia.
That's not hard.
It's not hard, but it's when they're in the chasm of horrors, or they call it the Peregrine Chasm. It's a pretty nice name. But from how I remember it, correct me if I'm wrong, it was
More legs
like
equals
sequels mad.
bad. Yeah.
It was them getting caught in spider webbings or falling into spider webbings, and just giant spider bearing down, and then his character just like, oh, I got grenades. No, 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 no. I don't know if it was a crit fail or what, but he definitely lost a finger or two to those grenades that he used to get rid of that thing. Also, centipedes. Ooh, I haven't used those for a horror thing, and I've seen them playing Elden Ring. I've now seen one made of undead skeletons. So like, oh, okay, that's a thing.
I have a
Great
crippling
imagery.
fear of insects.
Oh,
Yeah.
well then.
This is also
Huh.
in the first one shot that Jacob was a player for me in. I featured rest monsters. And if you're unfamiliar, they look like giant bugs.
And also, Deep Thought brought up a good one. Another way to do horror: you don't see it unless you roll high enough, and then only some people in the group see the eyes in the dark, or hear the skittering along the walls, and then you just get that moment of guys, we might need to stop. It's like, what? No, what? Just keep going. And, no, guys, seriously.
It's that kind of falls under the not a deer trope. Not so there's a trope. Let's see if I can find like the exact wording of it.
I was say it's been a while
Like
since
you
I've
see
been
a
on TV
deer,
tropes.
but it's actually not.
No, so
one?
it's a way of describing types of horror or like types of creatures because there's the it's not a deer, it's not a deer anymore, it's not a deer and maybe it never was.
Mm.
And so like the not a deer is like more of like the sarcastic type of like, well, what do you think it is? I don't know, but it's not a deer, you know. The not a deer anymore is like a creature that slowly, like maybe looks like a deer to start off with, and then over time it slowly turns into not a deer.
Stands on two legs.
Yeah, stands on two legs, or it like its mouth goes wide, or like stuff like that. It develops like human-like features, or for example, then there's the not a deer and maybe it never was, which is probably like the hardest to execute type of horror, but one of the most effective if properly done, because the way you execute that one is, let's say you see a deer. Wow. Over time, it slowly begins to like corrupt itself until it gets to a point where it is no longer a deer, and you can hardly believe that you ever thought it was a deer at one point.
Okay, I thought that was going to be more one of those things where it was all in your head.
I mean, you can do that too, but
yeah, because I got one of my college friends has been going through a lot of audiobooks, and he's delving into a lot of the horror genre, which is either really good or really bad. It's kind of hard to do that in written word, unless they're either. It's hard to do like jump scares or horror without being either a psychological thriller of did this happen, did it not happen, or was the main character actually, is he actually seeing these things? Is he killing
Mm.
people because they're actually creatures, or is he insane? That can be kind of done. But then if you're just trying to go boo, it unless you kind of go campy and just like what was he finishing? He was reading up Nosferatu, but it spelled like a license plate. Nos or R2.
Huh.
Yeah, I think that has like a TV series, but it still is like it's kind of campy because there's a vampire whose powers to bring kids to Christmas land, which may or may not be turning them into thralls. But there's other people with superpowers, but they come to cost and all that. So it's like it's it's almost more like a superhero thing than it is a horror thing. So it's interesting to think
Yeah.
of that, comparing that to tabletop horror.
Well, especially like one thing that I'm kind of very impressed with any DM who can actually do that is bringing something that's actually horrifying and actually scaring in a way your players, because yeah, you have no visual medium to a certain extent. You're just
It's
telling
strictly
them a
theater of the
story.
mind.
Yeah,
Unless you
and
slam
it's
a mini on the table.
but even then it's like ooh.
Well, look, sometimes they can be grotesque, or you have fun in like I like to use Roll20 a lot, so you can just blow up images and you can have creepy kind of maps and all that. You could do the same thing probably on Tabletop Simulator too.
Probably.
Have a creepy map, and then you reveal this thing that was in there, or something like that. Like I'm not creepy versus horror, like Puppet Time,
Yeah.
creepy, very creepy, but also we were kind of really gung ho about a lot of that stuff.
I think in regards to like giving a visual as well, like part of it is like on the DM to like act it out if they can.
Mm.
Because for one of my friend's birthdays, or not for his birthday, it was for a groomsman party. I was like, all right, if I'm back, I'm running a not a deer one shot. Came back, and like one of the things that I did, because we were playing in person, I didn't have any minis, I didn't have a map.
Oh yeah.
And one of the things I did was like, spoiler alert, I had a deer creature that transformed into not a deer.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I did was I like actually acted it out. And so I like turned off the lights, save like very, very like dim light so we could still kind of see. And just at a point where they could barely see me, I just like walked in on all fours and like slowly stood up in like a very unnatural way. And one thing that I can do, but it sucks to do, is like speaking while inhaling at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
If that. Hello.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Fiddle.
Yeah.
Sticks. And I was doing like that voice for the creature
Mm-hmm.
at like 11 o'clock at night in almost pure darkness while you can only see my silhouette.
Yeah, that can even be done over online too. I think one of my penultimate fights, I end up back in the days of Skype.
I remember Skype.
Yeah, no, it's like got on camera, dim the lights, put on my lab coat, go crazy. I'm not here, just him. Just the final boss. There's no DM anymore. He's trying to go take me over.
There is no DM. There is no DM in Bossing Say.
Oh, God.
Oh, God.
But
Yeah,
how will I map my games?
I feel like as interesting as making creepy voices is, it's very dangerous to destroy your own voice by trying to make like a.
Well, that's why you know
Nonsense
your
voice.
range. Like, I'm not. Well,
Yeah.
A, it's not as scary, but I'm not going to have the creature talk like this all day. No. But then we have the deep. Oh yeah, that was fun too because he was trying to break out, so he was calling out the players. It was a little sad, not sad, but I did remember one of them, Stephen, would always complain, and I really wanted to just say, no, sit down, you. I'm calling you out, not your character. Oh, but yeah, breaking the fourth wall can be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's nothing to see here. I rolled a nat 20. What do I see? for a moment, your body doesn't feel real. It's
Oh,
stiff
God.
and immovable.
I definitely contemplated throwing things at players if we ever had in-person games again, depending on the. But that didn't happen, sadly. I mean, luckily for everyone's bodily health.
That's fair.
Yes, psychological thriller would be the best way to put that in.
So, obviously, as you know, I homebrew a lot of creatures.
Mhm.
If you DM for me in person, please throw things at me. Okay.
Why? Why?
But I homebrew a lot of creatures and or adjust a lot of creatures to fit
Hmm.
this scenario that I wish. What is like your go-to like method of creatures? Do you focus solely on like vanilla creatures that are like very fitting? Do you like adjust?
Depends what I can find on 5e tools. If it's if it is a D&D campaign, favorite website. But it depends. If it's something big, it's usually something I make. But if it's an encounter on the way, what would fit in there? Let's see what lists up. All right, these guys come here in these biomes. I think that they could take this thing. Maybe depends how long I've been with the group. Because there's definitely, if it's starting out, it's like, I'll go by the CR. Hopefully, I don't slaughter them and just put a little fear into them. But then later on, it's like, okay, this thing says it's CR 15. Yeah, no, these level 10 guys can take it easy. They can take 3 of them easily. Like, what? You get a feel for the group and all that. But yeah, for the most part, it's taking. I like taking pre-made enemies, and yeah, maybe an adjustment, maybe add a different attack or different resistances, or
Yeah.
take the stat block and call it something else. But yeah,
Yeah. Like
Oh.
and has seen and experienced in person multiple times actually me adjusting like creature stat blocks and abilities.
How intensely would you say that for example, two groups of the same level of characters differ in terms of how much they can take on? Is it
wildly.
like wildly
Yeah,
different?
it
Okay.
is on a per group basis.
Yeah,
Okay.
because you have role players and you have role players, and then you have people who min max.
Yeah, there's
Mm.
there's role players, min maxers, the rule lawyers.
Well, those ones aren't so much mutually suited. And even then, you can still have a role player who likes to roll big, who likes to win,
Mm.
and you
Yeah,
do kind of got to balance around the big guy, or whoever's doing the most damage. You kind of got to go. All right, how can I cripple them just a little bit, but not make them seem useless? Because you definitely don't want to go. All right, that cool thing you got that's doing a lot of work for you. Okay, yeah, no, yeah, it's useless this fight, and the next 5 fights, and the fight after that. But
yeah.
if it's like a one-time thing where it's like, oh man, Moon Druid transforms too much. What if I take away the moon? That's just a weird off the top of the head, but do some sort of thing to prevent. What was it, moonlight? There's some sort of way to prevent transformation, but have someone who does that to try and just kind of like, okay, guys, I gotta help me.
Yeah.
I think Moonbeam reverts creatures who have transformed into their original form.
That might be it. So something that has a lot of moonbeam, or in 5e, which I love the 5e layer thing, the layer action for enemies. So it's yeah. So on 20, moonbeams come down from the ceiling because the layer of the creature is at its advantage. So it's like it's not quite another thing to kill, but it's another extra attack, helps with the action economy. But yeah, it's a moonbeam. Why is it targeting the person who only transforms? I don't know, but you don't want to do that every time because you don't want to target people. Then it's just unfun unless they built the tank. Like
Yes.
like in my Monday game, I am Tank Man McTank in full armor. Attack me, attack me. I'm down. Get me up again so they can attack me.
Yeah.
I feel like also another thing that will definitely change the balance of the group a lot is how much people talk and coordinate before they make their
Oh
characters.
yeah,
Oh yeah.
oh yeah.
Like I think part of the reason I love this group so much is because I kind of was
Yeah.
I just encouraged people to be like play what the fuck you want because I
True.
think that is the most like purest form of just being able to enjoy D&D. Like, yeah, moments like this with the Squish Squad happen.
The face
This
squad, you
squad.
mean?
Yeah, the
You don't
face
have to.
squad.
You have to do our positive light, not our negative light. That's how a spin doctor works.
Yeah, but like, obviously moments like that occur, but then you end up getting people who enjoy the characters a lot more, enjoy playing them, become a lot more like attached, and gives you a
Face
lot.
faction.
Face faction, but then give you a lot more like as a DM flexibility in being able to tell your story and like kind of interweave everyone together into like a, a cohesive group. And while it may not always start like the cleanest or the most like optimized, it always ends up becoming like one of the best games to watch and play.
That can be. And also, yeah, with deep thought, exploding bullets, sneak attacks. Well, enemies are on alert a little more often and spread out a little bit. But also, didn't your gun explode a couple times? At least. I'm trying to remember if that happened. And then Rhea brings up a good point of, yeah, give them a way to figure out to save their powers. So there's moonbeams coming down from the ceiling. If you take cover underneath thing or something else, you can still transform. But then you have to use ranged attacks, so it makes you transform into different things. Don't clip their wings. Just I don't know how to continue this. Besides, I don't know, put a 6-foot ceiling underneath them, so that way they can still spread them. Just not use flight. Also, that sometimes that hacks.
Shoot holes in their wings. Jesus.
Holes can be repaired, but that's not. It's. But that just reminds me of an unfortunate thing. We had a player who was an Aarakocra, or however that's pronounced. They got wings.
Yeah.
In I think it's an Avernus campaign, and just unfortunately, so many of the encounters were inside for them.
Oh, no.
It was every combat was, all right, can I fly? It's a 10-foot ceiling. Like, you can hover a little, but they can still hit you. Can I fly now? No, you're in a tunnel. Can I fly now? You're in a building.
Like 90% of Descent into Avernus is just like stuck inside and underground.
Yep. Yeah. Until we got when the city went, spoilers, when the city goes down to Avernus, it's like, oh, okay, you can fly now. Oh, this is good. This is great. But yeah, that's one of the troubles of the pre-builts is just occasionally it's like, oops, I have a feature that's not quite useful.
Yeah. Because like there's a reason a lot of the pre-builts have like races in them, because it's kind of like play this so you can do things.
Or the backgrounds in there too might benefit from that. Yeah.
I think I don't want to say the biggest offender of it, but one that really leans into it is Eberron.
As much as I like Artificers, I've never looked into Eberron as a setting. And Warforged. I like Warforged and Artificers. I played both, but still, yeah.
It focuses a lot on like science and like crazy science. So you can play every goblinoid. There's the changelings. There's the Warforged.
So that sounds like a fun time. I don't get what could be wrong with that. Mad science, explosions.
It very heavily. Oh, the short rest mixed bag. Yes. Sorry. And sent me the Not Another D&D podcast of the short rest mixed bag.
Is that like a random table to roll every time the party short rests?
I'm not 100% certain because I have yet to read it.
Okay.
However,
it does seem like for DM, tables seem to be like the tool.
yes
to
and
help
no.
with like.
So with tables, because you're talking about like stat tables, loot tables, yada yada. Yes and no. I personally don't use a lot of tables.
Depends. Like I really for treasure, I also like to scroll through the wondrous items and just give what I feel is appropriate, or give the useless thing. The things like I don't know if they have a use for that. Let's see if they do something creative with the wand of flowers. I think the time I did give that out, they used that to make spices. And it's like those flower, right? Yeah. Okay. Cool. Whatever. Yeah.
Rosemary, let's go. I don't know.
Exactly. Yeah. So I like to give out the weird things that end up being you try and see if they use it for fun ways, and if it just sits in the bottom of their bag of holding, so what? They're never all going to be winners. But also occasionally you do want to design things for characters. Like, yes, you found. I'll be honest.
The Wand of Smiles.
God, the Wand of Smile. It's never going to work.
It's going to work. Eventually, it will. Statistically, it has to happen.
I guess it's going to work on something that has low saves, like a troll or something, and then so the troll's going to smile and then bonk.
It didn't work on. It didn't work on Rickon, even though Rickon has a 6 in charisma.
Yeah,
but that was just like.
We have to wait for a bit then.
Maybe.
So the short rest dilemma for the thing Anne sent is regarding an Aarakocra and the banishment spell. So the pretty much banishment kicks you out of the world for a little bit. And they were on a ship, a moving pirate ship. And so what banishment does is it puts you in the same spot that you were banished. However, the argument is that because you're on a moving pirate ship, that same spot is either still on that ship or fuck off in the middle of nowhere.
I would use the rod shenanigans and just wave it away as you're back on the ship, unless there's some sort of unless it creates some sort of interesting situation. But for the most part, that's probably a no fun. If it's an Aarakocra, he can fly, and if he can catch up with the ship, sure, why not?
Yeah, in the situation, it is an Aarakocra.
Yeah.
So it doesn't necessarily.
Did somebody say no fun?
No fun allowed.
Oh, okay. We'll see you guys later.
Oh wait, no. We just rearranged the windows.
I've been here the whole time.
I've been here the whole time.
But it definitely feels like one of those things of, I mean, it does depend on the DM, but me personally, I would do the fun thing, not the annoying thing or the kill you thing. Yeah. So it's like, I'm not going to have anyone use the movable rod and suddenly, zoop, they're out of atmosphere and dead because the worlds are moving constantly. It's attuned to the gravity, the magic of the core of this planet or something like that,
Yeah.
Or that world is flat, Who knows?
I mean, that could happen. God, that just brings me back to my childhood of Custom Robo. I don't know if anyone ever played it because it's one of those games that goes.
It sounds familiar.
It's a GameCube game of just
yeah. And it was you could build onto the
little robots in fighting arenas that popped out of your head or whatever.
Oh my gosh, I'd forgotten about that.
Oh yes, indeed, and it's one of those things where it's like
BattleBots.
But it's in more of a Mega Man type thing where it's not in the internet; they're in their own little arena that just floats.
Yeah.
This feels like Metabots, but in an arena.
It's small Metabots. If Gundam Build Divers would probably be the closest approximation, but again, it's not in a physical arena; it's in a tiny little mental arena.
It's all in your mind, man.
Yeah, but they definitely pulled that thing of, yeah, man, you took history class. What do you think what do you shape is the Earth? And it's like round. No, dummy. What happened to you? It's flat. Everyone knows that. And that's one way you could do that.
That's fair.
Also, oh god, the Luther combo. We had before we really cared for following rules as much, where we thought grease is flammable. That makes sense. All right, and this is back in 3.5. Tasha's hideous laughter is you save once and now you're laughing, incapacitated, in the flaming oil.
I don't know why when you said grease is flammable. I just thought of the city. Or I guess the country.
That is too.
Country, pardon me. It technically is flammable. And so that's why if you saw me kind of go.
But yeah, that's a fun moment that caught on because it was there's this nice little barn man. I cast grease. I cast Tasha's hideous laughter. These men are burning their lungs out as they can only laugh and breathe it in.
Grease, the material, is flammable, and the grease spell specifies that it covers the ground in slick grease.
I think in 5e there's some sort of thing where it says it shouldn't be ignited or something. I might be misremembering something.
Oh, it never should be ignited.
So, because I have the spell pulled up right here.
Yeah.
Slick grease covers the ground in a 10-foot square centered on a point within range and turns into difficult terrain for the duration. When the grease appears, each creature standing in its area must succeed a dex saving throw or fall prone. A creature that enters the area or ends its turn there must also succeed a dex saving throw or fall prone.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing stating it cannot be alighted.
So that's definitely a DM thing where
Yes.
I think that also was something where we might have undid it because we found that combo just a little too good. Because they're prone, they're in fire. And but also the funny thing with Natasha's Hideous Laughter is that latched onto that character so hard where it's like, oh, such a bloodthirsty bard. Are you going to make him laugh in the fire again? It's like, guys, no, I don't want to do that again. That scarred my mind. I'm still thinking about that in character. I'm having troubles coming to terms with it. I want to be a better person.
Be a charred bard?
Charred bard.
That's only if they're fire Ganassi too. Oh, and I don't think it was full on gaslighting, but we definitely, well, I was running it, so they were definitely going like, I can't believe you did that.
Believe
Grease
it or not.
Go Grease Lightning.
Oh, yes. Double pull.
Oh boy.
What a mess.
Talking.
We've just been doing DM discussions. Francesca asked a couple questions. So
Good questions.
Yes, very good questions.
Yeah.
And you
Get
were
into
getting none of
Spagoodle.
them.
Yeah.
Oh,
How do you go about scaring your players?
Scaring them?
Yeah. Do you do scary or like horror in your?
Well,
We also
You mean, like-
discussed the various types of some various types of horror.
yeah, I guess. I don't do horror often, but I like
We'll find out soon.
secrets. My sister says that watching me DM is similar to watching like a sociopath with good intentions. And so it's like I like to mess with them. I like to make them think. I like to, I just throw red herrings everywhere. So if I basically you just have to make one semi-big surprise on them and then never trust anything you do ever and use that power like all you want. And even if if they look back historically, I give them pretty much good things. I kind of spoil them, but I make them sweat for it. But it's just I scare them by trying to find the things that stats can't help. The party that I've been running, a couple of first-time players or people who'd only played once or twice, I just kind of let them keep their rolls. They're pretty overpowered. Like I've got it. It's a party of 6 or 7, and 2 of them, I think their lowest stats are 13s. But it's like,
Damn.
okay, you've got the whole, okay, you've got a familiar, I'll put it in danger, or you've got like a family member, I'll put it in danger, kind of thing. But
but I'm
one of them,
I have no living relatives. I am strong by myself.
Guess why? But like, one of them is the rogue who I can never hit, and it's if I even get a chance to find them, but their backstory was just they're protecting some magical stream in the woods, and they're like, you can come up with the rest, which is a death sentence for anybody. And so I was like, okay, sure. And like,
which you know from experience, Jacob.
Yes, I do. This is well, the consequences of my own actions. But it's just sort of, they've got the potion bottles of the stream, and they don't know what it does, and they've just when somebody's in danger, they let them drink it, and it's helped. I make them roll nature checks or something like that, or medicine checks, for no real reason. I mean, that's a great way to make people stressed and scared, and just kind of build the tension. So when you bring the big thing, they're already kind of on the edge of their seat.
Or no reason DM rolls, where you just like to hear the clatter of the die.
Yeah, just
a little more effective in person, but still.
That does immediately put you on edge as a player when you just randomly DM is like,
That.
can you roll a d20 for me? Just
luck check.
A flat check. You're just like, why?
Oh, you only got a 9? Oh, okay, that's enough. That's okay.
It's fun to do.
And if there's nothing that happens right after it, that's even more like.
It's a trick I like to do, and when they go back and watch this, they're going to yell at their TV. But it's do that after they make a specific point in conversation. Like while they're looking around and trying to find something. Well, it's like, we could go over the top of the trees. I'll be like, oh, roll perception. Like, I don't know why, but they're like, okay. And nothing freaks a player out more than when they roll high and get nothing.
Mm.
They're like, 23. I'm like, good to know. Keep going. Yeah.
Depends on the player. I've had
perfect. Thank you.
Depends on the player. I have had some where it's like, but I rolled high. Why did I get? Some will complain. You gotta feel that out person to person.
Yeah, you do that person to person, and at the my best trick or my best tool at the table is just sort of the like, you know what? Write that down. I'll follow up with you real quick, and then just talk to them after the game. I'm pretty spoiled. I've got good, nice players, patient ones, but I've played with some that aren't, and that have to take a minute and spray them with a water bottle, and be like, okay, we'll deal with it. I'm sorry, but just short answers. Keep them guessing, and do things that don't make sense. Go off the track a little bit.
That reminds me though. You said 6 to 7 players. What's your perfect group size? And would you rather have too small or too large? Would you rather have 2 people or 7?
Oh man.
It depends.
I love
on
them
the
both.
People in the group.
True.
Like the size that I am most comfortable with running is between 3 and 6.
There's a certain.
Yeah, it depends on how they mesh.
Yeah, it all depends on who's at the table, how they mesh. But it's like, I think me personally, my best strength as a DM is improvising. Like, you can just throw my entire notebook to the side and I'll come up with something. We'll make it work.
Woo, improv DMs.
So when you reach a certain number, I think the most I've DM'd is 10, maybe 11.
Ew.
But when you reach it, when you reach that level, it's so chaotic. It just kind of gets its own flow, and it's sort of like, hey, I'm dealing with 2 or 3 at a time, 4 over here. People are making. And again, I'm very lucky, very blessed to have players who aren't like talking over one another and like stealing each other's spotlight. But it helps. Actually, I find the bigger groups help the shyer players because then not everybody's looking at them. I can just get 2 or 3 over here, and then occasionally they're like, oh, wait, what happened? Like, oh, well, this happened. All right, we're moving on. But man, the small groups, you get those personal moments.
That's in person though, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh god, yeah. I can't imagine trying to do more than
this is about as much as you could get away with, I think, online, unless like everybody knows each other really well.
Yeah.
Or pays good attention.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of temptation online. There's a lot of temptation online when we're not on video to like, oh man, what's this article saying over here? Crap, it's my turn for initiative. I have 5 levels of spells to look through. Oh no.
Well, and it's
I'll
just
give
like
it myself every now and then.
Looking at like Westing Dolls, for instance, one of the biggest things that sent us down was Sean O fell unconscious, and I misunderstood. When I heard that he hit the deck, and I thought, oh well, yeah, because I'm a panda who just laid a bomb. Of course you hit the deck, and but he had fallen unconscious, and I had no clue for like 10 minutes. That's the reason I'm like picking up Georgia and trying to get out of there because I'm trying to help, not knowing that they're unconscious on the ground. And so that used a lot of actions, a lot of feats, and that came back to bite us in the end. Whereas at the table, you could do that, and somebody would be like, wait, but he's unconscious. It's a little easier to kind of stop somebody and go, but he's unconscious. What are you talking about? Wait, what?
Yeah, and I was going to say with 10 players, the deep thought was like, good point. That's when it's okay to split the party. Yeah. When it's not just one person wandering off on their own.
Absolutely.
And if you've got 10 people at a table, the odds are somebody else at least has a little experience DMing. Like, so you can,
co-DM can come in handy, or get 2 separate. Because I've definitely ran the idea past my high school friends who, now that they're all accumulating significant others who sometimes play as well, we're getting to that point where it's like, okay, we could actually have 2 DMs doing 2 different things in the same world, possibly mesh them together, like just the groups bounce, players mix up, that type of thing.
That's actually how I, was introduced to DMing and learned to do it. Was my DM that's when we had about, some weeks it was 3, some weeks it was 8. So it was like every week was chaotic. But on the big ones, he would just be like, hey, you've seen me run a couple encounters. I'm like, yeah, I think I've kind of got that figured out. He's like, well, here's the encounter you guys are going against, like, and he knows I don't metagame, so he's like, just run this while I take them through this plot stuff. I go, okay, so that's what I would do, and then I got hooked, and I never played again.
Excuse me.
Well, I mean,
until today. And even
Rodeo
then, I mean,
clown.
Kurt, you mentioned it. Me saying Reefus does this and Reefus does that, and having to get in that mindset of I do this, I do that. I'm like, oh, that's my DM showing. I'm sorry, like I have to get I'm storytelling. I'm not narrating.
Oh, that's
I was
a hard
not the one
mindset
that
to
brought
get
it
out.
up.
Oh, I know. You just brought it to my attention.
Yeah.
I definitely do feel guilty
do it in
about that every now and
character.
again. Where either I'm not sure, not as much right here, I think, but I've definitely in the other game where it's like, oh, someone's running it, and I'll be like, some player asks, oh, hey, so how does this work? And I immediately go, oh, it's this. This is how this works. It's like, crap. Wait, no, that's the DM's job. Sorry, Brett.
Oh man, yeah.
Vice DM.
My buddy who plays in my group DM'd for the first time. Gosh, I guess about a year ago and everything, and like he did great. Like I thought I did an okay job, not like stepping on his toes, but man, the control freak in your brain. If you've been doing that for so long, and you have to sit there and play for just 3 hours or 4 hours, it's just like those puzzle games where there's like 8 light switches and one turns something on, something off, and you have to find the right combo. There's always something that's on and that you're trying to turn them all off. And but he did a great job being like, what would you rule this? Like, what would you say on this? And then there's times where I'm like, well, I would do this, but it's your game, man. So
I had the unfortunate experience of it was a blessing and a curse. I got to be a player to a DM who had been DMing since first edition. That
can be fun.
Since Dungeons and Dragons.
AD&D.
So they've been DMing for a very long time. But I kept finding myself being like, well, it's this. It's ruled like this. It's because there was like he was one of those people that was very like wording sticklers. But there was a lot of times, yeah, and then there was a lot of times where it's like I point out the wording and then I get, well, in my world, and I'm like, all right, I'll drop it, but like stay consistent, please.
Right. Yeah.
It's always a struggle sometimes to find a good player DM match, but it's also fun to do. Like I recently came back from a convention where it was just a small one my old college ran, where the role-playing guild just gets a bunch of people together and just do a day of one-shots, essentially.
Oh, that'd be
so that was fun to discover. Yeah, it's fun to discover new systems. Like I found a WWE wrestling system. It's interesting, 2d6 based. A lot of. It felt like you were playing kind of like you were playing pretend fights. Like, all right, I'm going to do this because the fighting goes.
So like watching wrestling.
Yeah, well,
I enjoy this, but I feel like a child.
You can break kayfabe and attempt to injure your other player, though. But every class has their own injury reaction. It's interesting. The fights are like, all right, I'm going to try and do this move to you. I'm going to react this way. All right, I'm going to react to your reaction like this. Now I'm going to roll.
Okay.
And it's also neat too because if you succeed, you can choose to give control to the other player, and then you get a motivation or whatever it is. I think it was, or momentum, and that lets you re-roll and whatnot. So it's like encouragement to do that, or you can say, "No, I'm still in control. I'm gonna fail." Oops.
That's fair. I guess
drama.
Everybody wins at once.
Wrestling is a drama.
It is a drama.
I was gonna go back to something else because we were talking
back.
about like player DM kind of compatibility, and I was like, well, I gotta ask, like, what are some of the stuff for players that is like, oh, thank God, this is a player that does this thing, or like, oh God, no, it's a player that does this thing.
I'm showing my age a little bit because this very much comes off as like, just the way you phrase that. When it comes to your perfect player, bachelor number 1 behind over here, what do you like? Like, I was raised on game shows by my grandmother. I love when, honestly, I found that player DM relationships are like any other relationship. I love having somebody that compromises. It just makes that easy. Of like, you may not agree with what I do, but you understand for the better of like keeping this. We're here for 4 hours. It's hard. Everybody's taking time out of their day. Let's get something done. I appreciate But at the same time, I appreciate players who challenge me a little bit and will say, like, well, what about this? Or, yeah, sure, that's rules as written, but think about it this way. And, like, I love that because I make fun of myself for being a control freak, but I feel like if I don't get a lot of feedback from people, I'm doing the thing where, I'm just telling my story and you guys are playing it. That's not really what I want. As far as, like, what I hate, kind of what you mentioned, Kurt, just sort of like they're either rules as written or rules as intended, depending on what benefits them better.
Yeah.
I actually have a soft spot for the people who show up and like they're not really wanting to be there, they're not really interested, like, okay, whatever, my character does it. The whole, it's what my character would do cliche. That's, to me, I'm just like, well, oh, okay, you're just not getting what you want out of this. What do you want out of this? So I can that kind of ties into big tables, but I don't know. I'm not super picky as long as they want to play and as long as they approach it with good faith, because whether it's, I actually get angrier when I'm not the DM, but whoever is DMing, like, put a lot of time and effort into this and probably a little too much heart, speaking as a DM. So it breaks my heart when somebody else is DMing and somebody at the table just doesn't care and is ignoring, and I'm like,
I was going to say that's the biggest pet peeve is,
yeah,
right, it's your turn, it's your turn, it's your turn, it's your turn. Come on, pay attention. 4 times we should skip your turn, but no, it's, I mean, not everyone, sometimes people are doing different things, it happens. But my favorite thing is when players suggest skill checks or modify skills, like, can I do this? Or can I do intelligence, streetwise, but with an intelligence basis on it? I like those. Can I flip this rule on its head, or can I suggest a nifty thing? It's like, oh, I like it. I'll write it down so I'm hopefully consistent, but there's no guarantee I'm going to remember this as a thing. That's a warning.
Yeah,
and it makes you a better DM because you're like, oh man, and it's kind of like, what if I approached other things this way? And my favorite players in the world are brand new. I love players who have never played D&D before. I love, I mean, the rogue I was mentioning earlier. She was just like, what's an easy starter class to do? I'm like, rogues are a little overpowered, you get your monks, those are a little complicated. So rogue, fighter, barbarian. If you want magic, sorcerer, I guess. It's kind
magic
of
is always a whole.
I do not think that this is my personal opinion, but I do not think any player should be introduced to D&D through a magic class.
Yeah, you and I have talked about that.
Yeah, just
whoops.
just so much can happen. Like, magic classes, especially in the early game, are the hardest classes to play because they are squishy. There's a fuck ton of reading, and you have to manage your spell slots. And especially, I think sorcerer is the worst one to start.
That's true,
with because you also include meta magic.
I guess I could see that. Yeah, it's hard for me to say that because, like, a lot of people, myself included, were drawn to it because, like, oh, I want to cast fireball and blow something up.
I think it's a great, like, draw mechanism, but in terms of just learning the game, I think monk and fighter are the 2 best classes for it.
Yeah,
I started with 3-5 with a monk.
Warlock is definitely the safest pick for spellcasters to start with.
Oh, yeah, because...
That is a very good point.
Yeah.
Eldritch Blast. Okay, yeah, now, and then you get, as you level up, you get new things to mix it up. But yeah, no, well, Warlock's a good suggestion for that.
And so much of my DM style is, who are you and what do you want? So it's like, I've got my little circle, and I kind of know how to approach all of them. But, if they are interested in, like, the options and different things you can do, okay, I might point them towards maybe even druid or, like maybe a half magic class or like a arcane trickster rogue or
any ranger.
Literally, and ranger's such an underrated. It's literally part of why I made Reefus a ranger. Is I'm like, I never play them. I never play with anybody who does them. I'm like, I'm just gonna do it and see what happens.
Yeah, when I played,
bad things have happened.
And was there for my first time ever playing a ranger. And I was like, this class is so fun. And I played, like, the basic bitch ranger of just a hunter. Like, and it was so fun.
It can depend on the campaign a bit, though I might also... I haven't looked at Ranger in 5e. But I remember the 3-5 days were very much like, oh man, I chose my favorite enemies.
I
Are
think
my favorite enemies ever showing up? Oh,
And
well.
the
Tasha's
I think
fixed that.
Tasha's
Okay.
has saved the Ranger, because I've used all the alternate stuff for Reefus, where instead of terrain based, I get a new spell every 2 levels or something like that. But favored foe is awesome, and that's what I was kicking myself in my spar fight. Is twice in a row I forgot to use favored foe, which is just I think it's like an extra D4.
Yep.
And I was like, oh man, gotta remember that. And the next turn I forgot again, and so I was like, well, crap. And
There is-
Ranger has a
triggerable
lot of
thing
stuff where you can add dice, a lot of
I
1d4
feel like-
here, 1d6 there.
I feel like part of that was like I should have reminded you, but at the same time, like
I should know better.
That is a
Decent
interesting.
players.
Well, yeah, that's an interesting point though, where it's like I do remember talking to someone once who's like, what was their gripe? It's like I had this sickness. The DM should have reminded me. And it's like the DM's trying to run with 6
The
different
world.
players. You should help them out. Just tell them that.
Yeah.
like I have. This is the dramatic over
Mm.
generalization, but like I have 12 trash mobs, a big monster, and I have to keep track of everyone else as well. You miss things.
Yeah, you miss things, and it's I've actually run into that same problem where one of my players died, and we don't really do death at the table because
The character, right?
The character, yes, the character. Michael can never be slain. It's I've tried. He's but his character died, and we don't really do death at that table because it's just it's an area we don't like to go into, and so. But I did the whole, I could get into how he died, but it's like an hour-long story. But so he was in his. I gave him a chance.
Slightly strayed from the original question of favorite and least favorite thing.
Us stray from the question?
I
What?
know.
But go on with the death because that's a cool thing to bring up afterward. We can completely stray from the topic,
Yes.
but also unless Kurt wants to say the favorite things, and then we can come back to death.
Yes.
I don't care.
You the boss. Where I go? All
right, back to death story.
Always back to death.
We'll loop back around.
Loop back
We'll
around.
past death. Take a left. But so I kind of instead of just outright, hey, you died, because he basically turned himself into an electric bomb underwater, and it was really cool. It was. I kind of gave him like a little dream.
There is 0% chance of surviving that.
Yes, it was not in the ocean, but it was in a canal straight from the ocean. But I kind of gave him like a choose your own adventure thing, and I had he's the one that gave me the most backstory at character creation, and I tried to use it where I could, and but I started pulling all this imagery and all of this symbolism from stuff he had never gotten to visit, and so everywhere he went, it was like his home city, which had been destroyed before the campaign started, and he could choose like the library, the mausoleum, or the clock tower, and stuff like that. Where that's another thing, kind of on the earlier question of confusing and scaring your players. Things that sound important but really aren't. A clock tower. Like specifically calling it a clock tower instead of like, hey, it's like Big Ben, or it's a tower with a clock on it. It makes it sound important.
Yeah.
Yes.
Full title, The Clock Tower.
And so some of the choices could have gotten him permadead, and he comes back into the character. And he just kind of picked the right ones where he was faced with like I think it was his old mentor, like the old pastor or something like that. And he winds up in the basement of the church. And he's a sorcerer at the time. He gives himself to this deity to come back and protect his friends. And he comes back and says, okay, well, all right, well, that's the end of the adventure. I think it's the first time I've gotten players to cry at the table, which was like, and myself, like, I knew I was going to do it. And I'm like, wiping, I'm like, ooh. Okay. I had 2 weeks to prep for it, and I was still getting emotional. But it was, I said, okay, everybody level up. And they're like, oh, yay, you get the big yay. Oh, Michael, I said, not you. He's like, well, I'm like, you get a level in Warlock now. And he's like, oh, okay. See you in 2 weeks. Bye.
That's a fun one when you ask people to get a class and stuff there to just tell them, because I definitely got that's like one guy had a key of opening and just like, I'm gonna put it up to my head and turn, and I was like, you're not a door. Roll a d20. 20.
You're not a door.
All right. Let me
Aberrant Mind
give you...
Sorcerer.
Well, no,
that's what I play.
let me. Unfortunately, I didn't. He luckily bounced off that, and he was planning to take a warlock level at some point anyway. So I just made him take it sooner, and it was like close enough because it was more of a darkness based thing. It was just like, here's some lore. I'm not going to tell you it's you watching the creation of the world, but it's you kind of watching the world get created. Hey, darkness. That's always fun.
I'm gonna actually narrow us in on a thing that Jacob said with like.
I say a lot of things.
Yes, I know. But it was drawing things from like the backstory and all that, and things that they may not have seen. What level of backstory do you all like to either give or receive?
Mm.
We'll start with Francesca.
It
Yes,
seems
That's
like a
actually
probing question for
literally
this
something
campaign.
that I wanted to ask. I noted it down, but yeah, actually, I'm kind of surprised at people who let the DM decide a lot of their backstory, because I'm definitely like I want to have most of it written down, or like not all of it, but the grand majority of it, and then if they want to pile onto it, that's fine. But yeah, I definitely come in with like, yes, so this is what happened. This is where they were born. This is the family. This is what happened from age this to this.
I enjoy Anne's comment a lot. If I like going, here's some shit, now ruin them.
That's definitely a different approach. But yeah, no. Yeah, I definitely enjoy making the backstory a lot, and I go very in depth about it. So
we'll rotate it to Sean, actually.
Yeah.
Oh well. It's actually interesting. One of my other like first handful of characters in D&D had no backstory because I was new to the system, and it's like, I make this guy. His name's Gunter. Why? Because you have a German and Germany and what's the word? Not analogy. Allegory?
Anecdote?
No, it's like
allegory?
a country. Is it allegory? It's just a country that is German. Magic Germany. I don't know. There's.
I think it's
but
just
there
allegory.
It might be allegory, but there's a fantasy Germany, and I was just
I'm
like, I want to be Gunther. He's a fun man. He
Parallel,
wants to do
analog.
Analog. Thank you. Thank you. Analog.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just made him.
I am Gunther.
Gunther. I am Gunther. Yeah.
Danke.
I didn't even have a last name. My DM had to.
I am Gunther.
He helped me come up with a last name and a backstory as we went, which was actually interesting. To be like,
amazing.
Okay, so basically you're going after you're in this party because you're the queen said you go fetch this person or watch this person. I was like, okay, yeah, no, I like it. Okay, wait, how do you think your family came into a position of power?
Magic.
Murder.
Wealth, probably, but not enough wealth. And it's like, because he wants more, not a common. Look, this isn't just because silver in him. No, that's not every character I make. But
and does bring up the adding backstory as you go to like moving forward for newer players is great. And even with experienced players, that can just be something really fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But still, that was a fun anecdote because he was a fun character. It was like, okay, maybe they mine, but they're not miners. They own a mining thing, but it's not a successful mining tunnel. It's like, all right, and then the DM goes, okay, yeah, I'll what's German for mountain? Or it's like, is Steinberg what his end up being? It's like and he's stuck as ever since. And he's a fun guy who'll come up again when we discuss how we handle death at the table.
Ooh, fair.
Of characters.
All right, so Jacob, into your backstory preference as both player and DM.
Oh, but wait, sorry, I was just gonna say that was an interesting time. I do like having characters to bounce off of. I'm not as good as it, honestly. Like my one game I ran myself, it was like there was usually a town they were associated with. So when they got to that town, that was their time. And maybe if they said they had an ally or an enemy, I'd try to have them pop up.
We will get to that after this question. Deep thoughts.
That's a good question.
That is a very good question.
Yes, Steve.
Do you want to go to the new question or the one you just asked me?
The one we just
backstory first. And
backstory
then
first.
Okay. Yeah. So people who, and listen to my experience, who just kind of let me run with their backstory fall into two categories. They're brand new and they're not sure what to say, and that's kind of like you said, Sean. I love doing that, of being like, okay, so who are you? And they're like, I'm a tiefling. I have a cool sword and a hat. I'm like, okay, cool. We can work with that. Okay, so we just kind of,
very important.
what kind of hat? What color is it? How do you wear it with your horns? And just ask them prompt questions, and they kind of fill in the spaces as they go, and we come up with something and talk to them out of after the game and in between games and what they want.
Why
See
is that?
my hat. The other category
One
is
better, why
me. The other category is me, which I feel like might get on your nerves sometimes, Kurt, and I apologize, but Kurt always comes like, so like, what do you want, like, with this, or is there something you want coming up, maybe like this, or should I? I'm like, I don't know. I just run off that high of like, oh, this is happening. Okay, we need to improvise.
It's not something that bothers me. I enjoy it quite a lot. I just when I prep for sessions, I like to get what's everyone's like short-term goal in mind, so that I can try and like plan for that a little bit.
Yeah,
You do
I
gotta
try to give you that. Like,
oh yeah,
Yeah,
but you
like
do definitely gotta.
like just my short-term goals are like
Yeah.
what I really want when I ask questions like that.
yeah.
I did realize though at some point you do have to make sure that there's a cohesive reason everyone's together.
Yeah, I just
Right.
do for and I literally just do pick one or two, or pick one through X number here.
Okay, but I've actually had a
Yeah.
campaign more or less kind of fall apart because we realized
Yeah.
about 6 sessions in, he was like, okay, you guys are kind of just meandering. Why is everyone together? And
It's a
we
great
were
question.
struggling, and he's like, okay, you have an hour. If you don't figure out why you're together, we're just going to call the campaign quits. And honestly, we
That's a
found a
ballsy
reason.
move.
It's
Damn.
he's a ballsy DM who says you have to earn your happy end. We have not earned a happy ending through him.
That's fair.
We'll address that later as well.
Yes, that's a whole
That's for the
style.
after-hours show.
Let's see.
But still, it ended up being like everyone just instead juxtaposed. Basically, it was a 3-person group. 2 people ended up making new characters around my character because my character is the only one who's like, I'm doing this thing for me. And he was like, okay, that we can associate with what I'm having as a. Well, he doesn't say he doesn't reveal a main plot immediately. It's not like you are all off to save the world, or like I had one where one of my campaigns with them was, it's like, all right, you guys are going down here. You found big plot device. Now you should head up to other area with other big plot device. Time restraints. Maybe there aren't.
I feel like I kind of fall into that of like with this group because I kind of just dropped you all in one area.
It's a cohesive way to
As
do
Silver
it.
loves to tell everyone as we meet them.
Well, no,
Yes.
because
Yeah.
it was literally like 3 of you were literally dropped there.
Drop in.
And all of you were told various things with exception to Silver.
Wait.
Wait, I was told various things?
Well, you know what I mean.
Ish.
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 Well, I
Enough.
think Bob is various things.
Yeah.
Bob.
I
liked calling him the entity, but calling him Bob was really funny, which is why I started calling him Entity Bob.
Yeah. Also, we just needed to stop being like this entity that inhabits Reefus.
The thing, the entity. Hi, Bob.
Hey, Bob.
Bob.
Yeah, but I guess I'll wrap up the like backstory.
Backstory.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It very much depends on the player because I like to improv many a thing. And so like obviously I like getting more information, but then also it's like for and I was like, give me bullet points. I literally just went, give me bullet points. But like everyone else I got like asked or received for like a very cohesive backstory, with exception to kind of Jacob, where it was you have free reign of this part.
There was a great backstory sheet that I can't find anymore, that I got from a different DM back in college. That was just basically, all right, list off
That's more than
3 enemies, 1 frenemy, 2 friends or 2 allies, And then I think that was really about it. And then why are you adventuring? So it's like, oh, okay, things that the DM can say. I like this person. I like this person, and I like that location. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Mm.
I mean that works. But I do like having creative liberties and freedom. But also just having extra information is very nice because like Jacob gave me a full family.
I gave you so much information, and literally, like, none of it was that dramatic. I just made you a really nice boy and handed him to you.
He gave me a very nice man's.
I remember asking you, like, how far into the family do you want me to go? It's like, immediate family's fine. It's like, okay, yeah. Here you are.
Literally, if you wanted to do, like, an entire fucking family tree, I don't care. You could do it. I don't care.
I mean, I am called out, yeah.
Yeah. But, like, you could go back, like, 60 generations. I would read all of it. I may not use all of it. Jacob the Kirk. Here you go. Ruin this sweet boy, please.
But that's, I mean, I've said before, that's kind of Reefus's thing. Like, that's his whole concept, is, like, how do you make a D&D character that doesn't have, like, a tragic, interesting driving backstory? He's just a nice boy. Like, he's a nice boy who works really hard.
Yeah,
and
Jacob, do you care if we, like, for the purposes of, like, expanding on this question, use Reefus' backstory a little bit? Or not his backstory, but his session 0, rather.
Oh, his session 0? Hang on, let me think.
Wait. No.
I don't think... I say this with all love and respect, and I say it happily because I love it. Did anything interesting to the plot happen in my session 0? Because he really just had a good day.
Yeah, it literally Reefus... Literally...
Obviously, I
will not use the very last part.
Yeah, don't hold back. You know, he's mentioned he was in prison. Let's not talk about that. I would say everything up to...
I'm going to stop at prison.
I would say up to the end of his date.
Okay, yeah. Pretty much, Reefus woke up to smoke because food was being burned in the kitchen.
My first roll of the campaign. Do I know what kind of smoke it is?
Yeah.
I did not understand that well. I thought he woke up to go smoking.
No.
I said I was in prison.
Went downstairs, saw his family, met potential love interest, went on date, went to bar, met rival, got arrested.
God damn.
Made
fun
of OSHA.
Made fun of OSHA. Always a good time.
But fantasy OSHA, so it's ocean.
That was a good laugh. I made friends with my rival's bodyguard.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Very talented. I don't know, like, what you have Klaus looking like in your head, Kurt, but I have Klaus basically looking like the little meerkat. I think it's a meerkat from Ice Age, who's like basically Bear Grylls with the eye patch and everything.
Oh yeah.
The ferret.
Yeah, the ferret. Yeah, that's Klaus Seafoam in my head.
Did you die? Sadly, yes. But I lived! Anyways, continuing on to the next question of how receptive we are as DMs to world-building suggestions from players. It's a hard thing to answer.
That's not something I think I've gotten all too much.
So, in the case of, like, with Francesca suggesting something that makes logical sense, I will very fully, like, embrace it. It may take me, like, a little bit because, like, it doesn't necessarily fit with what I exactly, like, imagined. But if it makes, like, sense in world and, like, it all checks out, I am going to add it.
I was going to say, it reminds me of one of his characters. Kind of forced me to expand upon something. There is an Inquisition and he had Inquisitor, and I was like, oh, okay, I have to think now how this thing operates. Hey, help me out here. You know a lot about the Inquisition here. So it's fun to bounce off them ideas and all that. Yeah, I don't think I've had too many people go like, hey, could you is this world, well, it's usually more phrased in like questions, isn't it? Like, hey, how does this work in this world? Does this thing work like this? And then at which point you go, do I like it? Yes. Okay, yes, it does work like this. Or maybe it's a little different.
to me, this is the answer to my question when people ask, how do you world build? It's the big secret to me. I'm just like, I don't do it by myself. Like, I come up with vague general ideas and concepts and like, oh, this would be really cool for like a long-term campaign, but we'll just kind of keep it out there. And then when somebody makes a character and they pick a spot that they like, I mean, that's why part of why I picked Orehead is because Reefus is an otter, but also just like a continent that's a big ship that floats around everywhere. That sounds cool. Let's go do that. And then, like, when they pick it, I'm like, oh, okay. So then I take what they've told me about their character and apply it to that region. And then the next thing I know, they've got at least a little bit of backstory to start, session 1 or session 2, whatever. And I've got a little bit of a continent that I can fill in along the way. I push that early with my players. I'm like, if you have an idea, throw it at me, because this is hard and I don't have a lot of time and I'm sleepy. So, like, let's, like, add some stuff in there. And it gets them invested.
Oh, yeah, and early is good too, because
for sure.
I was also picturing like, wait, is this like halfway through a campaign that you're like, I think this government should work like this?
Yeah, I do that.
But
too.
if it's like if it's session 0 and it's like my world consists of a continent name and like country name and a couple big cities, then
sometimes it's not much more, but
yeah, sometimes, but yeah, it's like I showed I think one time I showed the player this map. It's like, what happened? What's happening here? It's like, good question. Any suggestions?
I think
you're looking.
I think the best way to like embrace, like suggestions from players in world building is when you're world building and you have like a country or whatever, or a town or whatever that you're not like 100% on. Get 3 big points, like 3 main factors that like very much defines the city, and then kind of just let people go with it.
And tropes are your friend. Like, if you're in the really big city, find the corner preacher, use him. It just, how your players interact with those kinds of things can kind of help, like, decide, is this a nice city or is it kind of slummy?
I think we still have a TV tropes page that our DM made for one of our earliest campaigns.
I probably owe that website money.
Player, personally, for world building, the only thing that I'm kind of like, I do get kind of on people's case about is like whether or not the logic of this world makes sense. Like, if there's magic, that's fine, and if that's how the logic of it works, that's all good. But when it doesn't, it's like, but wait
a minute.
But why?
Half of my table is engineers and designers, so they're real quick usually to go, wait a minute, like, how does this work? I'm like, I think only once have I used the magic cop-out. I don't know, it's magic. But sometimes I'll be like, how would that work actually? Let's figure it out.
Literally, and session 0. Kurt, how do ovens happen? I'm cooking bread.
Or this also reminds me of And with the fruits.
That's literally a running fucking joke because of the session 0.
But also, it's the same thing. It just reminds me of how one of my first DMs, when he's a player character, what's this person's name? What's this person's name? It's a lovely thing for it.
It is.
But also just get a name generator, and it's like, oh god, no, I don't know.
Kurt and I have talked about this before, about like when you need to name something on the spot, it's like, you start looking at objects around the room, and you're just like, that's a bottle with dice on it. Ba die. That's a 3 lamp. Ba die 3 la. Yeah, and this is ba die 3 la. And like, and you'd be like, oh yeah, that's cool. And you're like, yes, that is a cool thing that I made up. Absolutely.
Never tell them.
Literally, like, one of my favorite things to do. I'm giving away my naming secrets here.
Oh, no.
One of my favorite things to do is, because I have a lot of stuff that just has like words on it in my room. Like, I have books, game cartridges, and so like one of the things that I've done is like for Gearus, for example. Ah, yes, German. Yeah, Gearus.
Yeah,
perfect.
Checks. Yeah. But where that will backfire is when you name something like from 2 different things completely mixed together, but then you realize it's like his name is like Anuis or something, and you spell it like Anuis, and then somebody at your table goes, oh, so like anus. You're like, oh no. Oh no. And then you've doomed yourself at the table with that character. It happens.
That happens a lot. Yeah, I was gonna say, it doesn't even have to be that vogue. It can even be just like, what was it? I think I had a mobster in a game, or I had a Cowboy Bebop like game, bounty hunter game, and I think, or no, this was the 1920s Pokemon game. So this was boom roaring 20s gangster time, and someone had an Italian last name, and I think his last name is now in the player's head either Ravioli or Linguini. I forgot what it actually is. It's whatever it sounds closest to, but that's what it is. It's what it's going to be forever.
That's fair.
I'm going to have to elevate him to a proper plot position just so it's like, you can't defeat me, so and so. Oh, you mean Linguini?
Shut up.
Just so they stop calling me that.
I'm also just a name-a-file, so you can usually tell when I've like worked somebody in the backstory beforehand, because I probably spent like 2 weeks putting their name together, and it means either something incredibly related or not related at all, but very specific.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
God, the Linguini just keeps reminding me of
I'm wondering,
another
another kind of DM question that has kind of
fettuccine.
It's like, okay, you got your group, you got your world building, but like, how far ahead do you start kind of like trying to push people towards the ending, or like, what's the ending? Do you have an ending, or is it like, well, there's that person?
I start with the ending because I'm like, yes, boss fight.
Dun, 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 dun,
So,
dun.
Yeah.
I'll let those two answer like fully before I expand on mine, because I have various methods.
Interesting. Yeah. For me, it depends. It really depends on if they've done what they need to do. Because I mean, I guess in theory, players could grind and do a different session. It's like, I guess I gotta level them up eventually. But for the most part, it's have they done have they completed their quest? Is this? I mean, I'm a fan of the milestone system, so if they do dilly dally and then I don't have to give them the levels if I design this, but also I can adjust the final encounter if I feel like they earned a 13th level.
I've been called out.
I can second that one.
I mean, yeah.
It's the sign of Kurt being a wonderful storyteller. They're just so excited. Like they're just like, I just want this cool thing to happen. Like I want to tell you, I won't tell you, but I want you to tell you it exists.
I mean, to be fair, that Pokemon game still hasn't ended because of reasons, and I keep telling them, hey, we can go back because I got a cool boss fight idea. I got a really cool boss fight. You guys are going to get there eventually.
You guys wait for it.
We're going to be doing this thing. You just wait for it.
But again, that's how it works, because it gets me excited, because I know Kurt loves good stories. I know Kurt writes good stories. So if they're excited for it, I'm like, hey, I'm excited for it. I want to do this. You're welcome. For me, it's so I'm not always very good at world building. I typically just start. I have, like I said earlier, vague ideas and things, and then as they get closer to something or as it becomes relevant, I kind of fill in the blanks beforehand. But that is something that bothers me a lot, actually. Specifically, it's like, okay, what are we doing here? The red versus blue. You ever wonder why we're here? Like, it's a great campaign motivator.
It really is.
And so what I do is I usually have 1 to 2. It's almost at the beginning of my campaign notebook is 1 to 2 world level problems. If it's that kind of campaign, maybe like 1 to 2, galactic problems or things like, or planar problems. And then for each of my major continents, I'll give 2 to 3 problems. I think I don't know if Matt Mercer does something similarly, or if I just stole it from him and forgot. I can't remember. And then then on each continent, I kind of look at this point, this is after session 0 or on session 0, like, okay, what's in this area? 2 or 3 problems. And then for each of my characters at the table, they give me 2 to 3 problems, and I make up 2 to 3. They may not use them all, but it gives me an option if something rings a bell and goes, oh, I could tie this in. All right, and that really helps me fill in the blanks on everything else.
Also, just need to call out Deep Thought. I finished every single game I've ever ran except for Pokemon. That's the only game that I've not finished running, so it's ruining my my reputation. My perfect score.
Got a bit of an argument here.
Yeah, I've ran a fair few games, but at least campaign-wise, I've finished it up. Back in college, it was really good because you only have 15 sessions if everyone shows up to every session. So that was you have a semester, 15 weeks, do your thing. Or if or if you really, or like I think I had two that went on for 1 semester, and then one that went on for a year, which so 30 sessions. But it's very structured. It's structured that was like, all right, we're running out of time. What do? I just gotta. Okay, guys. Well, this thing blew up. This big thing.
That's
Okay, yeah. Sorry, too, Bebop. I forgot. I didn't. I was mixing them up because I ran. The fun of having two different high school group and a college friends group is I ran the same campaign for them multiple times. And I finished the friends Bebop game. I did not finish your Bebop game. Okay, so it's two games.
But to kind of railroad back onto the question, when it comes to like figuring out when, I guess, what was the exact wording of the question again?
Basically, it's like, how do you plan an ending for your thing? Do you actually plan it? Is there an ending? Or do you, like, get to something and then it's like, I guess that's an ending?
So, I don't plan ends to campaigns. I plan character ends.
Sounds so ominous.
It sounds very ominous.
Death comes for us all.
The sword of Damocles hangs over everything.
It sounds really ominous, but it's what fully tells the character story is what I have thought up, like, at present, what is really, like, even if it's like sad, does it tell the full story? Is it like a cohesive ending? And so, like, for example, with Maltor, I have come up with like 6 different endings, right?
Yeah. That was going to be my question, was like, do you have like the 1 or 2 endings and like no matter what it's kind of going to end in that area, or do you but yeah, you said you have about 6 different ones. So.
I have come up with about 6 different ones, and depending on what happens on like a per session basis, sometimes even multiple times per session, it changes what endings I have in mind. I have like the big thing for when I'm designing like ends for characters, and therefore the campaign is like notes to lead up to it, but depending on the actions taken by the player, those notes may no longer be accurate. They may no longer fit the character. And I am a firm believer of not every character has a happy ending. And like, I think of the character end and then after campaign. I never think of end of campaign until the moment has arrived. Like, the story has finished being told. Here's the afterthought. Here's
the epilogue.
Interesting.
That word, the epilogue.
Because I'm very much raised on video games, so I'm very much all right, people, you got some side stuff with the characters, and now it's time to face the time dragon. And it's actually, I'm curious too now, because I built Silver around my own way of doing that. Silver doesn't, at least out of my mind right away, he doesn't seem to have a end, because wealth begets wealth, which begets greed, which begets more wealth. So I mean, once it transforms into a dragon and is satisfied with his hoard, never.
Oh god.
I do have like I have like a couple initial endings like in mind for Silver already. I have a couple initial endings for Rufus already.
Yeah, Rufus built kind of similarly. It was just sort of like, he's got a couple of motivations, and his big hook was, okay, I've done the whole anti-tragic backstory thing, but like, what motivates him? What motivates him to leave home and like risk his life fighting monsters, magic, when he's perfectly content at home? And outside of that, that's about all I got. And so I'm interested. Like I said earlier, so much of Rufus is just the adrenaline rush of improvising him, what's going on. Like, I have vague ideas of what to do with him, but I don't know where his story ends. I don't know where he's going. I got a little bit of an idea, a couple sessions in, but he's very much at least in my mind so far, the Caduceus Clay of like, he's here. He's got his goals and everything, but really he's here to support everybody else along the way. And then he finds his own thing as we go.
I basically stockpile my character with internal problems. Is what I did.
Yeah, you did. So, like, one of the things for Maltor is, like, So I've told
Sure.
Francesca this, and I feel like it's a fairly obvious plot point. If I want Maltor to get, more confident in themselves. And so, like, some of the things I have done are, what are ways that I can, like, push Maltor to
Good
being,
luck.
like, a more confident character? Or, like, at least not deathly anxious of literally everything.
Good luck.
Surround them with even squishier friends, so they are de facto the muscle.
I can't do that. Asura is the tankiest character.
Especially with
We go back and forth.
especially with the music guy.
Yeah.
That's
Mom
That's free
override
hits.
TM.
There you go.
But no, like Asura with the addition of the music spirit is easily like hands down the
Yeah.
tankiest character.
We need that though. We need that spirit there.
Spirit's the fighter of the group.
Yeah. Well, I'm
The
also
bark.
thinking about.
I mean,
Well, to be fair, I'm probably be Bardic Inspirationing him and Malachor most often because you don't use rolls that often. Asura doesn't use rolls that often. I only
I mean, I
sometimes
would.
use rolls. You could, yeah. I mean, now it might, but like I did that first session, I did Bardic Inspiration, Bardic Inspiration. Oh crap, they're not using that. They
No
don't need to use
one's
the
using
Bardic
the
Inspiration.
inspiration.
No one needs to use it.
Well, like
Uh,
in the
After I used
beginning,
it.
well, in the beginning, I was trying to not avoid rolls, but I knew that I was rolling with disadvantage the whole
Oh,
time,
yeah.
and so I'm like, how can I help people like
And we didn't know.
otherwise?
Yeah,
People were
learning
just like,
that was like, oh god.
That was great.
oh, oof. It's-
Because I've definitely rolled with players who just have that.
yeah, it
Jacob
happens.
is definitely one of my favorite types of players. Of I will shoot myself in the foot for plot. Okay, thanks.
It's like
Absolutely.
And I are on different ends of the spectrum, and it's like, no, I must min max until I die. Like strength dump stat 218s.
So
And I'm like, yeah, I got all 12s. Let's see what happens.
the-
Like-
I've had an all 14s character. He's fun.
So the thing with like this group, this kind of goes back to the favorite players because I never really answered that. Is everyone here is minus and because they're not physically here, but you know what I mean. Everyone in the group is like an archetype of my favorite player. Because we have the will shoot themselves in the foot.
How convenient.
We have just unabashedly like sticks to the character and is super fun.
Ah,
We have the character that like leaves a lot of room for growth. And we have hello, please ruin me, okay, bye.
That's a good point.
Like-
But like my least favorite types of players, I am thankful that none of you are like
Yet.
are very much the pick me characters.
Hmm.
I greatly dislike when it's no, I'm the main character of this story. Pick me.
I've never had that issue.
I have experienced it from both a player and a DM point of view, and it is one of the least fun to play with, and it's one of the least fun to DM.
Oh.
Jacob,
That could be. Is back.
I'm still here. I just gotta let my dog in.
okay.
So I guess you guys can just stare at my wall for a second.
You know, either way, whatever.
We have too many technical issues. We're on edge.
Yeah, like it's a fun thing of just. I thankfully didn't have to deal with it, like right now, which is part of the reason we did one shots as like interviews, as an application process. But when I am allowed to like genuinely enjoy the story with my players, I think that is when I am having the most fun as a DM.
Reasonable.
Yeah. Here's one question I want to interject with. What's everyone's goals as like a DM? Because I'm very open about mine.
I was gonna say.
You want to hurt us.
Yeah, make us cry.
One of my goals is to make people cry through feels because part of that means I've told a very effective story.
My wallet is empty.
Haha, I'm rich.
Silver's having a nightmare just because like
The moths are flying out
It
of
was-
every pocket.
It was the long con.
Oh god. Oh god.
yeah, but like like I guess player and DM perspective, like what is your like what's like one of your main goals?
To finish the campaign, obviously. No.
Well,
I mean, in a way, kind
Huh.
of. Get
It's not
to
something I
a
think about as
satisfying
much.
conclusion is definitely something that I kind of look forward to, or that I look for in kind of D&D, which is, you know, not necessarily something that you get for
all the time.
every
Yeah.
campaign. But it is extremely satisfying to actually kind of go through a story arc, through character arcs, and get to an ending that's satisfying, which is like the big goal. If you can make that happen, that's like nice. Okay, job well done. Congratulations, everyone.
Yeah, it's like I'm not. We've made many jokes about how Reefus is just a blatant projection of me, like of self parody, even by D&D standards. But my first priority as a DM and as a player is like to make sure it's the most I metagame is to make sure everybody else is having fun. Like, I try. At least I think I do a decent job of just not forgetting. It's a bunch of my friends at a table most of the time. And it's like, so as a DM, I talk with them all in session 0. What do you want? Do you want more combat? Do you want more role play? Do you want more this and that? And
I feel like that kind of got like thrown out the window for this campaign because it's
no.
I meant like
Mhm.
we're all voice actors. Of course, we're all going to prefer roleplay.
You can
I mean,
like
heavy dungeon crawl might not have been. Yeah,
that was not the move.
not the move. But it's like that's a fun challenge too. That's a side tangent, but essentially,
Every once in a while, that could be good.
yeah, it's like you can work a character or a player who loves role play and loves those interactions. That you can work that in with a combat. Because again, my table's pretty evenly split. I've got role play, combat, and 2 people who don't care, and they're just like, I want to roll some dice. Cool.
Math rocks your click flag.
But like in Reefus's sparring fight, like I tried to give him a little character. I tried like, okay, how does Reefus like approach a combat now that he's not sleepy all the time? And so that's where I can kind of show, oh, he's been like Mr. Rogers this whole time, but when he gets to fighting, he gets a little more blatantly pulling from Goku there. Like, he's the fight itself is like an art and a respect. Yeah, but as a player, it's much easier to me as a player. I love just prompting and receiving prompts and playing off of characters back and forth and getting on that one-on-one moment with people, or like Hootersons where we're all kind of playing off of each other. It's one of the best Moltor moments. They hardly say 2 words.
Shout out to Francesca with just like the greatest facial expressions.
To the point where you start to realize, like, okay, is this Moltor, or is like Francesca is having fun, right? Like we want to include them, okay? Like, and
I've
then
always said, like, if it ever gets to a point where it's actually me and I'm not having a good time, I will message in the group and be like, all right, guys, wait.
Everyone just picking on Mount, or why aren't you speaking Mount? No.
Oh, it's like coming from the Christian South. It's like when you come out of your room for family dinner and everybody's like, oh, well, look who's still alive, and you're like, ooh, I'm going back in the cave now.
Yeah.
It's like one of those things where it's like, well, I was planning on doing this, but now that you've commented it, I no longer wish to do
exactly. If you didn't comment, I wouldn't. I would just be doing what I was doing originally. But now you commented. Now I don't want to come out.
That's actually, I don't know if I'm just gonna throw a question in real quick if I can. What do you do with this sort of table lag? Like, nobody
Dead
really
space,
knows
dead
what
air.
Yeah, dead air. That's
Table lag is an interesting phrase, though.
It's a very interesting phrase.
I thought you meant like technical difficulty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh no. I buy an Ethernet cable is what I do,
but yeah, dead air can be a difficult one if depending on the group. If everyone's just stumped and no one really, it also depends if it's online or not. If it's in person, that's a lot easier. You point to someone and you go, "What do you think? What do you think?" Or I did have a DM who, for like one shots, who was very much like all right, I'm starting the 2-minute timer. If you don't choose, I'm choosing.
The egg timer is a great tool.
It's a great one. Yeah,
it's one of my favorite memories as a player.
But it is difficult to deal with otherwise, unless you start making suggestions for like online.
It's very difficult to say because like especially with the amount of technical difficulties that we've had, a lot of times I can't tell if it's just like technical.
I try to keep moving for that reason.
Yeah.
I
It's
don't know, I feel like. Sorry.
no, it's a matter of like who I'm playing with because, with like my friends at home, one of my players and one of my good friends, is very like go 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 go. But then like, for me, when I'm a player, a lot of times I have to like stop and think for a moment because I play characters that are dramatically more confident than I am, and so I'm like, what would a confident person do?
I'm kind of like on the player side of that. I sometimes feel like I don't leave enough room in a conversation to breathe. And I feel like that might be a little bit of like the theater background where they're like, let it breathe. Like you have to let the conversation breathe because you're talking too fast and you're trying to move along and like get to the end of
I'm
this.
sitting right here. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't really get that from you though. It's like, I don't know if that's just me, but I don't think there's ever been a moment where it's like, let it breathe with this group.
Well, that's good. Because that's actually kind of more of my that has been more of my concern is to not have quiet moments and not let things kind of settle a little bit.
I think our group has very much got the thing of when things are quiet outside of technical difficulties. When things are quiet, it's very purposefully quiet.
Mm-hmm.
This group has been great, but
Mm-hmm.
that is something that I personally tend to have my mind on.
Yeah. And I would, believe it or not, listening to me, but I definitely prefer things to be too slow and to like really like if a conversation goes too long or if we're spending a little too long on this plot point, I'm okay with that as long as they're role playing or as long as they're enjoying a combat or a puzzle or something rather than okay, we've gone through like 4 pages. Okay, I gotta level you guys up now real quick. And
I'm very guilty of going too fast for story, because I'm very.
I remember you brought up
childlike and
travel.
Yes.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
very,
a hard thing to not speed up.
Yeah, I'm very like excitable when it comes to progressing to like the next fun point, but then I want to stay at that point for a really long time, and then the second we're done with that, I'm like, all right, to the next one.
Yeah.
Is that why we've been in this city so long?
It's a big city. There's a lot to do.
There's a lot to do.
Yeah.
But to touch on world building too, I thought you did a great job of world building that city by not telling us anything, like by just letting us explore it, and by Maltor running into Casino Church, like that adds a completely different dimension to this city than I had already imagined, and it gives Maltor so much more trauma than I imagined already. Like that
we don't know about
personally so
that
deep.
nobody knows about yet, which is great because you'll find out one day.
I'm still mentally recovering from that. Like,
that was great because that was so goddamn unexpected.
It was so anime. I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
Especially the music coming from the outside, like not even inside. And I'm like, what is going on? It's great world building. I love that. Just completely throw your players for a loop.
Mm-hmm.
Look, it's worshiping Zenyu and Alaro, the god of luck and the goddess of misfortune. We're better than a casino.
Yeah.
In the religious sector, just gonna admit it.
Because I almost, just peek behind the laptop. Like I almost messaged Kurt to say I'm gonna follow Maltor to just see where they're going, and just to keep an eye on them, and it wasn't just like a Reefus is always trying to make sure everybody's involved and having a good time and things like that, but just I think I've mentioned in the last episode or two, he feels a lot of guilt for Maltor being involved in his dream, and now he's used the boomerang, and now this has started a lot of guilt there. Again, he's a very good boy. He has not experienced a lot of hardship. He's very sensitive to it. And I don't know why I didn't, but I'm once you got in the casino church, like I've gone back and watched, and my face the whole time is just very much like. And I think Rufus may have just died from like overstimulation, like walking in and just
God, yeah,
like his brain was blown up.
Protect the boy.
Just falls over.
Yeah.
The boy. The child.
They just sweep him out of the building.
It's just like, or he would have walked in and immediately gotten lost to the worst possible place. So just like, my God, ooh, shrimp, and like walked off and found them.
Yeah.
Found the mafia boss meeting room on a complete accident.
The one time I rolled great
for the day of my daughter's quinceañera.
Oh, a quinceañera, that's a great time. Or like
well,
the one that would have been the one time I rolled well on stealth, and Malter would have never known I was. He comes back to the castle like, hey, where's Rufus?
No.
On your back.
No, but they seem to have a heated discussion about sheet music. That's interesting.
Oh yeah.
That was.
Also attacked me directly.
I will say one
that
of the
was-
hardest parts of DMing this group is there's so much like involuntary music stuff.
I'm glad I have a vaguely musical, like not a full. I did choir and violin for a couple of years, so I know how to
did
read sheet
choir
music.
for an
Hey.
singular year,
Oh no.
and that's pretty much my whole experience with music, other than just appreciating it.
Choir was the only class I failed in middle school because I got tired of singing old songs and I wanted to sing pop songs, and they wouldn't let me.
Interesting.
I was a
Uh,
sixth grader, you know.
I was also very traumatized by my experience of attempting to get into choir the next year, which all of you have heard the story, I think, except for maybe Sean.
I was gonna say, getting into choir for at least in middle school, it was you take choir or you take art. Do you have to get into it? No.
So
Just-
for my junior high, it was choir, band, or orchestra were required for 1 year.
Yes, and then it was art after that as an option for us.
Okay.
Go on.
But then going into high school, you had to audition to get into any of those. And then I happened to go through puberty during my audition.
Oh no.
Was pretty much I was told that I have no talent and should pretty much just give up. And so that hit me really hard.
Jeez.
Yeah, that's cruel.
Yeah, no, my teacher way back when. Well, to be fair, I think
it was the one teacher that I had been with for choir was very supportive and like after class would like give me voice lessons. And then I went through fucking puberty in the audition, like suddenly no control of my voice.
I was gonna say Deep Thought would remember, but I've tried. I think for choir, I don't think we had to try out for choir, but we only maybe if we did, we just had to sing scale or something simple. It was like the men's a cappella group. Yes, I had to do an actual tryout for that, and so I could sit there going bum bum ba da 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 dum bum.
Bases.
The bass.
Surprisingly, I never got a chance to do that.
Yeah, but like part of the biggest issue is like I have very little musical knowledge in a group that has dramatically more. And so I'm trying to instill like the theming and stuff, but then I'm like constantly having to refer to everyone being like, am I doing this right?
If it makes you feel any better, Kurt, I also have no musical knowledge whatsoever. I have a show Saturday that I gotta sing in and play in. I don't know. I can't read sheet music. Like I understand music theory to a degree, but like
This
not
is
like
the boy
you
who writes songs.
I was gonna say you write songs, but you have no understanding. Excuse me?
not no understanding, but like
Okay.
this is why I laughed so hard at this Asaurus Silver conversation, because Silver was just like, well, I don't know, I just kind of feel the vibes. And I think I said it in the episode, like, this was a direct rip of a conversation between me and Anne, where Anne's like, one of the first times they ever saw me play guitar, they're like, that's not an F chord. I'm like, yeah, it is. They're like, no, that's not F. I'm like, well, I mean, it sounds like F. And like, nobody's going to stop the song and go like, that's not an F chord. And he's like, I will.
The boy who writes, come to sing again.
I wrote songs long before I played them, in my defense.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's like it's done pretty well, I thought. I mean, as a musical person, I get the vibes, I get the theme.
Yeah.
Well, that's another kind of like very difficult thing about being a DM is that technically in your world there's going to be experts about absolutely everything, and you're just a person. So it's like,
Well, that's why.
gosh darn it.
That's why bullshitting is a very valuable skill for DMs.
Excuse me, it's called improv.
Improv still, but then there's going to be things where both I mean, there'll be the things where you're lucky, and it's where the other players don't know, so you can just go, yeah, this is how this works. Unfortunately, later in life, you definitely get, I kind of, my chemistry degree says otherwise. So like, come on.
I have the misfortune
That
of
is
like I
not
think
correct.
everyone knows everything that I know, basically, or at least.
Oh.
Oh boy.
I-
We overlap in knowledge too
Yeah.
I mean,
much.
to be fair, I know how to turn brain off depending on what the subject is,
Yeah,
so
I mean,
that's
yeah,
always
that's
nice.
fair.
A good life skill.
Yes.
Oh God, PSU engineers. Yeah.
Oh god.
That really reminds me, because like creative problem solving is one of my favorite things to deal with as a DM. And I mentally hurt one of my friends who was DMing Starts Without Number for the first time by playing an engineer-based character, and having the capacity to look up or like figure things out faster than they can.
Oh.
And so they had to like consistently problem solve with me problem solving. Because they were like,
Oh.
I was like, hey, I want to make a suppressor for this person's gun. They're like, how the fuck are you going to do that? But like, you have your tools, but the only thing you have is a mechanical hand. And so I looked up how suppressors worked, and then I made a viable suppressor with the robot hand.
Is what, crush some metal, make it a can?
Pretty much the way suppressors work is it's the two tubes, right? And then inside the tubes are either like, they're basically like crescent shapes, or like overlapping scales, essentially. And that just suppresses it because it releases air back into the cylinder, as opposed to just out in a singular direction.
Okay.
It releases the pressure, you know what I mean. And so you just create a thing that just redirects the pressure, and that is a suppressor.
Okay.
How often do you like just open Wikipedia real quick? Like
Oh,
As a DM or a player?
as a DM or as a person?
Well,
Surprisingly little.
I was thinking DM, but that's fair.
Yeah, surprisingly little as a DM. Because I have a very large approximate knowledge of many things.
There you go.
I'm the other end of that spectrum of I have an approximate knowledge of a lot of things because I get down these Wikipedia and YouTube wormholes of just like, how does that work? Huh? Oh, that was invented in this. Where's this country at?
Mhm.
This country's ruler did what? How old was he? Who else was ruling at the time? It's called attention deficit. If you weaponize it, it's a great tool.
That's fair.
But we've frozen Sean, at least on my
No.
computer.
Yeah, he's frozen.
But funny enough, like D&D is
That is
how
true.
I learned
That
a
did
lot.
happen, and that did happen. Didn't Sean ask what otter yawns sound like, or something, and
Also-
Jacob knew?
I'll be right back.
Oh, and we lost.
Francesca said they'd be right back.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Oh, welcome
I
back to.
Hey!
Sound, but okay.
Yeah, you were completely frozen for us for a while.
Yeah, no, I was doing the. So it was still online, but it was doing the whole, disconnect, reconnect, disconnect,
Yeah.
reconnect.
But you were smiling.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
what
that was
matters.
great.
I guess let's refer to chat to ask any other questions which they have.
But what of death?
Wait for it.
I was thinking we could talk about that in a little bit.
Oh, that's reasonable. See?
Yeah,
See?
okay. I guess we're going for death at the table.
I asked about the death.
Death. Do you care if I start the show then, or if
You're boss.
I'm the boss?
Boss?
Oh my god. So when it comes to death at the table, there's
Of characters.
of characters.
I was
I want
waiting
to make
for
this joke so many times, but
Yeah.
it's
When
gonna
it-
gotta take
it.
that.
2DM.
When it comes to character deaths at the table, it highly depends. Because if it's in a one shot, I don't care.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
Clearly.
yeah. Well, I will feel bad about it after the fact,
It's
but
okay if
in
you
the
don't.
moment, it doesn't bother me.
Satiates the bloodlust.
Yeah. When it comes to like a full like campaign form, the death has to mean something, because if the character, like, it's hard to elaborate on this, because yes, I want the character to have like a full story, but it goes to the not all characters have happy endings,
Right.
where yes, I want this character to continue and, like, live their life. And, if the player genuinely enjoys playing that character, and, the other people around him like the character, I will find a way to bring the character back, no problem. However, if the person is done with that character, or like didn't necessarily enjoy it as much, it's that character's story ended there. They did not get to have that moment of heroism. They didn't get to have the full experience. Their life was cut short because it was simply their time. Their story did not have a happy ending. And I think this also partially goes to the epilogue of campaigns as well, because in a lot of people's minds, when the campaign is done, it's done. The world is done. The characters kind of cease to exist. But
Until season 2.
But that's not what happens. You don't just stop having a story. Your story doesn't end at the end of another person's. An elf and a turtle. Let's say an elf and a turtle go through an entire campaign together, right? That elf also, in the epilogue, has to watch that turtle age and die, because they live so much longer. But that character, the turtle, still got to tell their story and make waves even after the campaign happened.
Waves, turtle.
Involuntary, but I can't laugh, turtle. We're talking about death.
I'm sorry.
It's
too much Tales of games.
I think death should always have its meaning at the table, and if it's character-wise, it should be a narratively driven death that they are okay with. And if it just happens, oops, I killed you in a combat because, ouch, I just crit 4 times in a row.
Oops, all crits.
Oops, all crits.
Oops, I critted again.
It's not a meaningful death. It is one that opens up a lot of storytelling options. I don't know if that fully answers the question, but that's all I really have.
That's reasonable, though, and it still is an explanation.
Yeah.
It's an answer without end, just like the character stories without end.
Well,
but no. It was good. It was a good perspective.
Yeah. This is one of I think the most interesting things to ask a DM, because I think you can ask 100 different ones, and you're going to get 100 different questions or different answers.
And questions.
Probably more than that.
Yeah.
I think
mortal toil. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I said what I said. Because honestly, just so there's a saying where when you read a book, everybody in that book is a little bit of that person, of the author. No matter how different they write them, no matter how heinous or terrible they write them, it's either something that came from their brain. So it's either a part of them or something they've experienced. You can say the same thing about a DM, and death is one of the things I think that defines. But somebody's interpretation of death can be defined through DMing as a medium, just like writing or drawing or painting or singing or anything. Again, and as with so many things, and I feel like I say it with every DM question, it depends on the table, it depends on the players, because death obviously is a very motivating factor especially in the earlier editions.
Depends on the system, yeah.
Yeah, with 5e, it definitely focuses more on storytelling and grand epic things without the 4e kind of overpoweredness of it. But I again, even though my other table that DM does not really use death, I think I don't disagree with you, Kurt. I think just again, depending on the table, I think death can be a very powerful tool because death's much like life. Death's not always fair.
Mm-hmm.
You can that's what can make it hit so much harder at a table or just in a story in general. Is we're used to we're trained since birth to understand the hero's journey arc and where they go in it and what affects them in it and what they interact with. So to kind of cut that short is your brain doesn't like it because it's like, wait, no, that's not how that works. It's especially puzzle-based people, much like me and you, Kurt. I know at least it's like no, there's a couple of pieces left, but that can also be what makes it work, what makes it last. I mean, good Lord, I keep referencing Critical Role because I'm a terrible fanboy, but the Mollymock death is like it's unsatisfying because you just got like little glimpses of what he could do, and he's such an ostentatious, interesting character, and you're like, ugh. But obviously they're good actors and they're great actors and have time to talk about this thing. They kind of used it as like a motivating thing for the story. But
I'm going to interrupt you really quickly.
Please do. I'll never stop.
No, not for like a D&D thing, but it just started storming like super bad over here. So if the stream ever cuts, it's because I lost power.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So just yeah.
Yeah,
Keep that in
it's
mind.
depending on your table and your players, and you guys. If you're a good DM, you've talked about this beforehand with them.
I haven't talked about death with you guys.
You did.
Yeah, you did. You asked if there were any kind of like.
At least individually. I don't know about
Yeah.
I think it's because I asked, I think, this question earlier.
Yeah, I mean, you just asked, like, is there anything that, like, we shouldn't touch? And it was, yeah, I'm good. But, yeah, it's a thing that can stick with you. Like, it kind of ties into why The Empire Strikes Back works so well. The bad guy wins. Like, if you went into that movie, you only kind of get to watch it for the first time once, but without knowing all the other stuff around it, and you get the framework of a hero's journey in New Hope. But like you watch Empire Strikes Back, man, shit's bad. Shit gets worse. Like you kind of, I remember being angry at it as a kid because like it just ends and you're like, wait, no, we gotta go save Han Solo. What are we talking about? But it's a good tool when used correctly.
Mm-hmm. Well, personally, death belongs everywhere. To be the opposite of Kurt. No, but I'm a lot more liberal with my death. I sprinkle my death. It helps any dish. Well, from the one DM who's I learned it from him with the whole you need to earn a happy ending. At least is his mentality. Again, I'm more like you get there when you get there because I'm video game raised, but I'm also video game raised. Death happens a lot. My best battles, the most epic struggles happen because of the advice of plan to kill a player character in every combat. You're not going to. They're crafty little buggers, but it can definitely happen. But also, choices need consequences. Unfortunately, sometimes one of the best framed, but honestly, what would be framed if viewed from the outside, like how I'm about to tell, it kind of seems like a crappy death. It was in the Bebop campaign. 3 characters were chasing another one. 2 of them were basically flubbing their chase rolls. And so they were getting hit by cars, falling behind. And then one of them made it into this alleyway that I already planned on. It's a trap. So we had 3 people with full rifles, and we had a fisticuffs girl who just got gunned down in a rainy alleyway. Perfect time to play the blues. You have these 2 characters come up on this. They try and fight back, but the other guys have the high ground. They have advantage. They're wounded. They're pulling back. They can't even get to her body. Unfortunately, it was also dice were on fire at Savage Worlds. Oh god, that's 40 damage. That's 5 wounds. You have a few bennies. Sorry, that's all I can say. But so unfortunately, the action had a consequence. It wasn't the best because it was the dice hated her and their dice hated them in just the wrong fashion.
Yeah.
But in Crestfallen, even in one of my first campaigns, the Gunter was going after Johann, and he was like, "Okay, keep watch on him." Johann got killed by one of the other player characters for making fun of his mentor, essentially. Low health after a fight. He's like, "Why'd you just insult him? Magic missile." It's like, guy, okay, he's at negatives. Roll a death saving throws. Anyone doing some?
Did any of us actually like?
He wasn't
anybody.
even. No, he was not a nice person. He had his moments, but he was not. It was a little half joking at the time. It was very much like, does he have any loot? Like we let him.
And then nobody pipes up. So
but then Gunter afterwards, like, Scheisen. Oh no, he's developing the Warforged for this world to basically try and capture his soul back. Which has some consequences because in this world, your soul gets shattered and then put into other people to reform things. So he may or may not have basically used wishes to steal pieces of soul from other people. But he got him back in like a little lantern. He has this little soul, but the death was still the motivation. It's like, I got to get this done. How can I artifice this? All right, let's do this. But death has its moments. Death can be great for character building. I always plan for death. It's if it happens, it happens, and it can be unsatisfying. Death has its place. Death can be unsatisfying because it personally for me, it's just it happens. Like I don't plan it like episode 5. Sometimes it happens, and as a DM, you just roll with it. Though honestly, one of my best campaign moments ever was in a no death campaign.
That's really unfortunate, Raya. A good example of death and poorly. My first D&D session I ever investigated something by tasting it, and the DM killed me.
That hurts. You just spent so many hours making that character.
Yeah, and that happened in Savage Worlds game too, where someone burst into a place, an unarmed guy with a pistol said, "Pew." Whoops.
I think that's what molds a lot of my opinions on this. I DM so many brand new characters and brand new players. My objective is usually not to scare them off the game. And so, I want to give them consequences and make them understand their choices carry things. And, it's not just a sandbox, unless they ask for that. But, I also don't want them to be... It would break my heart if somebody's character died, right at the gate, and they just never wanted to play the game again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think death is actually the biggest reason any of us, DMs, view it the way we do. Because the reason I think death should always have a story narrative is because I've bitched about this a lot, but one of my characters, his entire thing was giving people second chances that they deserve, when they deserved it, and using those second chances to redeem yourself, and if you don't, he's going to kill you because you wasted your second chance at life. And one of the people in game, one of the characters, the NPCs, was willing to work on themselves, but the other player was his character was very magic bad. Anyone who uses magic should die. And they were an Echo Knight, and in that world, using the Echo is considered magic. And so he tried to kill off that character, and I'm like, hey, don't. Obviously, they realized that what they were doing is wrong, and they opened their eyes to the fact that they had just been indoctrinated by this cult, right? And so they were willing to work and even kill their sister because their sister was actively in the cult and doing the bad things, okay. Right? Whereas for them, it was they were just being told because they were raised by this family, and so they thought it was what was normal. And so while my character was trying to work with them and give them a second chance at life, the one session that I wasn't there for the entire one because I had to go, the second I left, they killed off that character.
Ew.
I think that's the biggest thing I tell people when they're asking me, when they're interested in DMing and they ask me advice or whatever like that. I think the number one thing it's not about you. It's whether you're more story driven or you're more choice driven or you're more player driven or things like that, I think it just kind of makes you an asshole to ask 6 people to like show up and take time out of their day so you can like beat them up to feel good about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and,
like,
with moving with that intention. Like sometimes that happens, sorry guys, but
because I complained to the DM after the fact that
right.
like I really didn't appreciate it because they were focusing super hard on one character, and when I called them out in character, nothing happened of it. Right? It was like slap on the wrist, because their character, keep in mind, used magic, and we had 3 spellcasters in the party, and they weren't attacking the
Yeah, and also like a player's character should never die when they're not there.
My character did not die. The character that he was helping did.
I mean, a main companion type character, if you're not there, that also feels like it feels as if you were killing companion, like any kind of companion. It's like, no. If it's their pet, if it's their good friend, if it's
anything that would involve like, basically if the player's not there, I try to pretend that player is sitting there saying nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, okay, if they would be upset sitting here saying nothing and that happened, it's not going to happen, because, it's, it's just, again, kind of makes you an asshole if you ask me, but
but I think that's why we all view death like the way we do, because of experiences that have driven it.
Yeah.
I feel like personally as a player, death has always been very scary for me, especially since I have not yet the only character that that has died in a planned way because I needed to leave. So it's always been terrifying, but mostly because I get very attached to the characters that I create. And the idea of losing them is like horrifying, but that's kind of like the whole point.
The thrill.
Also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kurt, change that.
However,
no, kidding.
However, the idea of the thing that I still have not gotten over is the idea of like having a character die in a campaign and then bringing back somebody new, like coming in with some random other characters. Like, who are you? Who are you? Like that. I still not had like the idea of doing that is still like foreign to me. It's very weird.
I've experienced it more as a DM than a player because again, I haven't played in a very long time. But in the campaign where we don't really deal with death, it's sort of a thing of like, okay, well, how do I scare them? Because if your character doesn't die, then your players don't really weigh risk, and so if you can get them, yeah.
And can I tell the story of Tiffy after this?
But one of our characters, who is just sort of like the dad driving the minivan of the group, we had a lot of true neutrals, chaotic neutrals, lawful neutrals, kind of, and then he's chaotic good, and he is the cliche, by the book, chaotic good paladin, and an Oath of Redemption paladin, which is so hard to play RP-wise, and he did a good job, Lord bless him. And the one time that everybody's taking a long rest, and he's like, I'm gonna help the team. I'm gonna go like check out this crime scene. I'm gonna go be like Jesus Batman and go figure this out. And he did. He did a great job. Yeah, right. He did a great job, and like it was just a minor detail that I mentioned. Honestly, just like being snarky and full of myself. Just a little detail I threw in the background that he caught from another character's fight. He went back there, checked it out, found the illusion, and wandered in there. And it's this whole like underground secret criminal society of the world's worst, like and best, most famous people all working together to make each other rich. It's very Panama Papers, and but it's like I built that for them to find, if ever to find together. And every time you close the door, I roll 2d100 and it winds up somewhere different on the map. So that's why it can never be found. And so that's all of that to say, now he's like, what do I do? And I'm like, well, I guess we got to make some, either you can play one-on-one sessions with me on other days or something, or we can make you another character and kind of figure this out. So to your point of it is kind of awkward to be like, oh, we've like been through hell and almost died together. Anyway, here's Barry the Drow. You know,
That's because it's Barry the gnome.
of course not. That'd be ridiculous. Who names a gnome Barry? It's but it's something I love as a DM is watching the party come together, both in game and at the table, and finding their roles and finding their. Again, I usually DM big parties, so I love watching when like two characters go, "Oh, hey, we can use our abilities this way." Like we don't get along role playing wise, but in combat, you do area effect. I go in and knock them out. Like I love that. I love when a good plan comes together. So.
But before the Tiffany story, I was just going back to mine, which was Tiffy. Sorry, but back to mine where it was a no death campaign. Sadly, no, I'm kidding. But it's interesting to have the prospect of a player left because his character's ideals did not match the rest of the groups, and that's letting players kind of opt to do that is really cool.
Yeah,
because it's player agency. And then he also made one that more meshed with the group, and I was like, oh, they'll go do their happy, fun, a little more murder hobo adventures. Meanwhile, this one kind of had his sense of what he wanted to have done. I think I've told you all, but still retelling it, where they had found a werewolf girl whose the mother was trying to protect. Sheep were disappearing in town. They were like, okay, let's just bring it to the authorities, the church. And he's going, guys, is this really what we should be doing? Should we be giving this organization this thing? I don't trust them. We shouldn't. Honestly, we should probably either cure her or get rid of her. And they were like, So they had their fight, and he's like, I can't do this. I can't. He can't do this. So he left. They got their new guy, did their thing. But we eventually got to have another session with his character recruiting other people, going into a fairy forest, and then they got to having a whole adventure, and I got to have both groups meet up at the end, and it was really cool just to have all these different characters who were played by the same people come together and mesh up. And it's like, oh, okay. It's sometimes having the player characters still exist in the world is fun, because then they're something you can use either by you, or it feels better if the player gets to use them again. Rare, and it can happen.
And it gives the players a personal stake in it. So like, even if they didn't like him, it's like, oh, it's that guy. We know that guy. This is not a new guy we have to find out. It's that guy.
Yep. Especially when it's I forgot the race already with the mimicking
Kenku.
He's a Kenku bard. So when you heard your own voice at a distance,
that guy, TM.
No.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Right.
So
Tiffy. It's been a hot minute, so I don't remember all of the details. But Tiffy talks like this, and it totally isn't into DILFs. Pretty much, Tiffy got hit on. This is the same the same one shot. Yeah, made that very clear. Session 1. This is the same one shot where I played R-4M. And found out that Rangers are fun, cool class. But Ram was great. Tiffy pretty much got to a point where like she kind of killed the whole group involuntarily.
Very impressive.
Because she attacked a invisible gunslinger, I think it's like a drow gunslinger or something. So this invisible NPC like wouldn't flirt with my friend, and that was like so rude. Attacked them and then got us all killed because of it.
I'd be mad if I didn't know actual Tiffys. It's like,
and like I maybe kind of like double shot him Eldritch Blast, and then everybody was dead.
That is a good point though. Having been on the receiving end of one now, like how do you with TPKs, like complete board wipe? It's such a different dynamic than one character dying. It's like I think we just lost. Like it's the scene from Robin Hood Men in Tights where he's like, I'm not supposed to lose. Let me see the script. He's flipping through. Carry OS forever.
So I've only ever had like DM'd one TPK. I think it's a very lovely opportunity for some really good improv.
Yeah.
It's either I've never had that happen in a full campaign. It's always been one shots, or we have now a running joke in the high school group that how is this guy going to kill our group again? Because whenever we have run shots, there's like a 50% chance one of his characters is going to get corrupted or do something to blow us all up. Like because one time we had we all hear about the Tomb of Horrors, but we haven't run it. Let's go see what happens. And he touched the orb that granted a wish but blew everyone up in the room.
I thought it was Tomb of Annihilation.
Basically, it's Gygax is an interesting fellow, but we learned that he hated character. He hated losing.
He hated a lot of things.
There's a lot of hate in that man. But there's that, or there was one where GM ran a Slender Man Halloween thing and ended up mind controlling our strongest fighter, which ended up being him. And then, whoopsie daisy, turned on us. Oops. And we could not outrun him. He was a martial class with speed, and we were mostly casters, if I remember. We were out of casts. It was low on health. We could. Oh no.
I don't know, because
Steve,
both of you having been on the receiving end of like my first DM TPK. Fun fact: all of like the end was improv, because of course it is.
Yeah.
I think it's always a fun like way to give a thematic end or continuation of a story.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And especially with a one shot where you've kind of got a very central theme that you're building around. You don't have to do like these big interconnecting things. That was the first time in a long time that I'd had a character die, and he was just this stupid bullshit panda, and I was still like, oh man, dang it.
You enjoyed that panda though.
And it was a cool party. Like I thought,
Oh, yeah.
on paper it was really weird. Like, I had a gunslinger bear, and then we had like the samurai. That was samurai, right, Sean? Was that the subclass you used?
Samurai, yes.
Yes, samurai. And then Shauno was the
a dragonborn wizard.
Do you remember what type?
No.
He had a fancy robe. I remember that. And
that was cool.
That was cool. That was really cool. A fun item.
I think divination.
Divination. Oh yeah, like the robe changing color with like the water was really cool, or changing how much for the.
I don't remember him having the fancy dye.
That was cool. Yeah, that was very Kurt.
That was cool. But yeah,
I remember it's like.
Yeah, I don't remember him having the dye of the divination, but he may have used those. Or
oh no, maybe it wasn't divination. It was
might have been the standard.
Was it evocation?
It might be evocation because blam blam blam.
Yeah,
you can't go wrong with evocation.
Kamehameha.
Exactly.
It's and then Georgia, whatever the hell Georgia was, but it was like
the dog.
I remember thinking. I think during the super runaway when we were trying to get out of there, it's like this would have actually
so stupid.
Yeah, just like this would have been such a good I don't know. The party worked better than I thought it would. I don't know if it was the RP that kind of worked really well, or just such an extreme mix of styles.
Yeah,
I think it was a little bit of both. Also, Georgia was a warlock.
Warlock. Yeah. I knew that. I just forgot.
I was still wishing I could have gotten the other Sean out of there because I was hoping. Ooh, interesting.
Oh yeah, I didn't think about Genie.
Yeah, but I was hoping I could have gotten the other Sean out of there so it could be like, just go tell the others. I'll hold them up. And then when
you started to do that, I thought, oh, that's such a good narrative out, and he couldn't get away. I was like,
no, it's just there's too much. There's too much.
That's the best end of a horror movie is when everybody dies, but there's the one guy who's terrified running away, and then the credits roll or something.
Well, that some of the after credits is he meets us again in a bar. It's like, oh no, what happened? That would have been a interesting way to do that too.
But I liked our ending of us being again, just literally giant Little Big Planet dolls.
Yeah. Everyone
Also, it
walked
was very
in and
fun of it,
everyone
yeah.
walked out.
So what, Francesca?
I said I was also very fond of that.
Yeah, it was. I,
Ding.
I thought it was a good visual. I just, yeah, kicking myself after because I didn't realize with the whole that thing I mentioned earlier about Sean being unconscious and me not knowing it. Oh my god! Like it was so much later where I was.
I,
I did a lot of stupid things. Oh, I didn't.
One shots. It happens.
Yeah.
yeah. I think in terms of like endings, one of my least favorite endings that I have done, as much as I loved A Cold Touch, I did not necessarily like the ending to A Cold Touch. Neither of you played in it, but that was the first round. Francesca played in it.
Oh,
It was the first round of like the one shot like interview application basically, and was also there. And the ending of it, pretty much like everyone kind of got out and kind of had to live with the fact that they couldn't save anyone.
Hey, survivor's guilt is the thing. They can bring those characters back.
Yes, but
For the right price.
There was one character in particular. Francesca knows which one. I'm sure Anne does as well. That like after they found their person, because in A Cold Touch they were sent there as like part of the last wish of the person because they're like presumed dead, obviously. And as per like company protocol, they used the last wish or like dying wish thing, and had to go there to either help retrieve the body or like figure out what happened, right? And one character found their person, and they were a solely money-driven character. They found their person
familiar.
and then just kind of stayed for no reason. Because they're like, I'm here to get shinies and only shinies, and now that my source of shiny is gone, I'm still gonna be here. But like having to have characters like with that end that just felt really unsatisfying.
so that for that one shot, what we had was mostly like a tonal problem, where it
Yeah.
was mostly over the top comedic, almost slapstick, and then we had these moments that were supposed to hit, and it was like, what?
And
Yep.
I really only think that fell to like the fault of like one character in particular, being that same problem character.
Yeah, and it's a thing where like that's what's tougher I think with one shots because with campaigns you get a session 0 and you get to kind of like pick everybody's brain. You get a session 0, but you kind of get multiple. You can pick everybody's brain, see what they want, what the tone is, and then you kind of have a better idea going in. And honestly, that's what session 1, 2, and 3 are kind of for. Is to sort of, you've got your first big puzzle, your first big fight, and a couple of RP moments. And by that, you've kind of figured out, okay, here's what everybody's leaning towards. With one shot, it's sort of, hey, if I've got 2 people going rogue, or 2 people here having fun, but these 3 are like really into it. That's tough. That's a really tough balance on the fly.
Yeah, and I will also say they weren't like a problem character. It was like a problem for the setting because like they did like one thing and they had a very clear like intention with their character, and it just didn't end up fitting the setting. And that was like me as a DM not properly like adjusting,
Right.
because like they were a fine character, but in the moment it was
like sometimes you just don't have a fit, like, or it's just it's tougher in a one shot because it can be more of a challenge, whereas in a bigger campaign it's an opportunity. You're like, oh, I can develop this as like a counter or something, or I can't think of the right word, but essentially like if you're running a horror campaign, you've got the comedy character kind of deal, not comic relief, but just sort of the mirror. Whereas I think that's a common and a tough problem for DMs is when something doesn't go either according to plan, because one shots are a little more planned, or if like one or two people just sort of treats it differently than everybody else, you still want to incorporate them. You still want to like, they're bringing something different. I mean, that's what you want, but it's tough.
Yeah,
I also feel like as
sorry.
a character, sorry, I was gonna just say like I also feel as a player, if it's a one shot, you do feel kind of like as if you have more free range of bringing whatever to the table. Kind of like, oh,
Yeah.
it's my chance to do this wacky thing. So.
Yeah, and as a DM, I definitely should have handled it better. However, yeah, and as a literal mushroom, I should have handled it better. However, I did not.
Yeah, which happens.
It's one of those things that like, I really regret it. Like, because like there's a lot of things that like after the fact I was like, I should have done this.
Yeah, and those are the kinds of people that again make you better DMs. My sorcerer warlock death dream guy I was talking about earlier, Mike always like breaks the rules and always kind of like does things a little unconventionally and does things that may not make sense to what everybody else is doing. And that's a nice way of putting it when he watches this. He knows what he's done. But he's made me better at that because, I just sort of like have to put in safeguards and I have to put in, he makes me prep more, but he also makes me like not take myself too seriously and makes me like not put too much into my own prep because I'll be like, okay, I'm not railroading, but guys, I put a lot of work over it. You know what? No, if you want to go that way. Let's see what happens. So that can make you better. But yeah, again, I'm kind of beating the dead horse of like the one shot setting makes that really difficult, I think.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's D&D.
It's D&D.
I can still list my biggest mistake as a DM though, because you learn from those.
Yes.
That's true.
For me, it was trying to bring two different groups. One group controlling two different groups of characters. That's easy. Don't do the opposite of two groups, two characters.
Oh, no.
Two groups of characters. Because I tried to bring them together for a fun thing. Because I really like to do this. I ran my same first session or my first campaign. I ran for both my college group and a high school group. And I was like, hey, they should be doing these side by side, kind of sort of. Let's have them all meet up right before the bad guy fight, just to see what happens. So one group was on Skype, one group was in real life. Everyone on Skype was going over each other, and the real life ones couldn't understand them. Is me trying to control 10 people? No. I mean, that's also where I get trauma from saying 10 people. I go
I guess.
So yeah, don't overload yourself, and don't try and get so many people to be nice, or not play nice, but
I guess since
it makes sense.
I guess since we've addressed the like involuntarily addressed like biggest mistakes as a DM, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
What's like your proudest moment as a DM?
I mean, the two groups coming together. The other thing, that's one of my favorite moments. Yeah, that's kind of it's either that or it was the boss fight where I was on camera playing as the character. Who great guy. Oh yeah, Jake, that's the guy I was bringing up to you. Yeah, fun guy who was actually spawned.
Okay.
Fun guy who spawned from an unfinished, basically unstarted campaign. So he's a fun character. Yeah,
that's tough. I guess the first one that popped to mind, I'm sure I'll think of something else at 4 a.m, but it wasn't D&D, it was the Star Wars system. That we were playing. It is still DM. I just introducing a new reference. It's so it was a party of 6 with one NPC that they adopted who was actually supposed to be their first big bad, and they just rolled really well on charming him, and now they have a Death Wookiee with them, and I'm like, I guess I have to be a DM player character now. So they had been, I don't really know how they got there. They were basically just trying to go from one planet to the other, but in typical player character fashion, they kind of slap-dicked around and somehow wound up on like getting taken by like a big Imperial freighter that was like, picking up cargo. They were hiding in like a smuggler ship, but they basically came up with an idea to set the entire ship to blow. But I'm like, okay, you guys are going to split the party like 3 ways to do this. And they're like, well, how? I'm like, I'll tell you. So I pull out like the schematics of the ship, which, was in the book already, and basically blew it up and made a big map out of it. And they had, one team going up front to take out the pilots, one team going to the engines, and it just worked. Like, it worked on all levels. Everybody got their moment. Everybody got, the right puzzle and the right combat for it. There were good story beats throughout. One guy found a rival because, the guy whose ship they snuck on was trying to get out, and basically it was like the Mexican standoff of, we're trying to escape, you're trying to escape, they're trying to kill us, but we don't want either one of us to escape. And then the I think an underrated DM tool is the or the time mechanic. Like the whole, like, sometimes, usually it's the trying to escape, like, the cavern as it's crumbling kind of thing. But it was just sort of, hey, when you guys push this button, you've got X amount of time to get together and get out of here. And it just worked really well. Like, everybody was engaged. They everybody let everybody else flow really well. So I was just, and it was 50-50 improv and prepared, and I like it when chaos works. I'm used to chaos, improvising, but
I do actually got one other thing that was kind of fun, which again involved two same characters. It was the College Groups Bebop campaign where they I was like, Savage Worlds, let's see how crazy it gets. Make high-powered characters. So they did. It was really wacky. They were like hosting their own show while doing bounties, and no one could really touch them. They had so many robot things because I was combining splat books. Mistake. The sci-fi book in Savage Worlds is not supposed to be combined with anything else, I've learned. But they had fun with it. But the after point's like, you guys are a little powerful. I can't do too much. Do you make some low level characters again? They're like, yeah, sure. So they make a whole new party. It's still a little silly, but they are down to earth investigating. There's a murder. There's a string of things. People involved. They get to the end, and they get their shit stomped in by this person because, they were who I originally designed to face the bigger group, but because of that, she kicked their faces in, but didn't kill them, brought them to the dinner table and said, here's $2 million, go away. And they were like, okay,
I wish.
Hey, old party, we have some money to pay you to do something. And I was like, yes.
Perfect.
And then it's perfect. It was also one of my biggest what moments as a DM, because they were just like, all right, we calculated how speed works in this. We made a missile. What? Well, drones can go this fast. There is no upper limit for speed with these modifiers. So
this affects me directly.
This does about 5,000 d6 of damage. And I was just like, all right.
I would like to remind you that half of my table is engineers and designers.
Yep. Oh, yeah, that was very much they didn't kill the entire boss because it was multiple people. They were just like, the CEO gets in a mech suit. It wasn't even the person they were originally, like that bribed them initially. So it was very much all right, we want to use this one trick. And it's like, okay, yeah, cool. Buildings collapse now, so you kind of have some issues fighting there, but still it obliterated the one guy. It was just a fun, let loose, roll it on Roll20. We'll see what happens. Let's just make the click-clack math dice the most you can, because your brain sees big number make good.
Yeah, one of the best things you can do, I think, like one of the other things I tell people who are trying to learn to DM is, fuck it. Like, fuck it is such a great approach to so many things. Like,
they're never allowed to do that again, really
though. Sometimes you only give them one.
You only give them one. Sometimes.
But there are times where they're like, hey, I want to, try and punch my way inside of this building. And you're like, you know what? Fuck it. Go for it. Let's see what happens. Sometimes it works, and then you're like, oh, well, now I'm the dumbass. But sometimes it doesn't work, and your other players make fun of that character for the rest of the campaign. It's great.
Mm-hmm. Richard Bloody Knuckles there.
Yeah, it's like, oh, well, wait, maybe you can go punch the hedge, and we can figure things out.
Did it help?
He's an intelligent, well-spoken character. He was just, like, frustrated, and he's like, can I punch the wall in? And they're like, no, you can't punch the wall in. But, it's learning when to let go, I think, is a tough lesson, but I think one if you can learn early will make it better for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And learning when not to let go.
Sometimes the revenge is a best dish best served cold.
I am a petty bitch.
You mess with an NPC, well, when so many sessions later. Or I think I had one where, in that world where the good guys lost, they when they came to, there was a beggar that they met early on, and they were trying to revive the god of the proper world in this one to help them out. And I was just like, yeah, you helped out that beggar. It turns out it's that god. It's like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
cool. Yeah. The callbacks are always fun.
And real quick, because I know we're getting late, but it's just something on the much earlier question of how to scare your players and how to like get them.
Why do we keep coming
Oh,
back
Very
to
much
this?
earlier. Yeah.
It's such a great question. I love it. I think it's because it's answered so many different ways. But something I usually approach with is, what scares you? Like what
I try and
between
avoid what scares like the players / DM. I say this having accidentally picked your 3 biggest fears, but
in a row.
yeah,
Depends on the person for sure, but
yeah, but like I really try and avoid.
I
Just
thought of the bugs
addressed
again.
it.
I'm sorry.
I try and avoid what like people are afraid of. And it just so happened with Jacob that I picked the top 3 in a row.
I don't like porcelain dolls. I don't like the thought of big bugs like crawling on my face and things like that. What was the other one?
I don't know.
And
You'd
what was
hate
the other one?
Sekiro.
Jack in the Box.
Oh, okay. Jack in the Box I'm not scared of as much. They give me anxiety. They never come out on Pop. On Pop Goes the Weasel. You expect that. Your brain tells you that. But you know. But it's like with watching like when I watch scary movies or thriller movies, like what scares me and what gets my attention going, even if I've seen the movie before, what makes me kind of, I don't think this is any spoiler. Yeah, no spoilers here. The Batman, in the first 5 minutes, there's a scene where a guy's sneaking up on another guy, and as soon as he turns around, that thing's gonna happen. And the second time I watched it, I was still like,
it's like the Strangers.
Jump scares.
The first The Strangers movie has.
What was that?
Well, not being necessarily like a great movie. It has one of my favorite horror scenes because it's heralded as one of the best horror scenes in general, but like, it's one of my favorite. Where it has this like very nothing scene with like fairly normal-ish like camera angles, right? It's just like a slightly lower camera angle. So you're looking up at a character ever so slightly. I did tell you about this. And mute the stream for a little bit. So pretty much what happens is it's just this nothing scene where this character's like doing a thing, talking on the phone, and you see one of like the masked people in the background walk in, turn and stare at them, and then just walk off screen. And that's it. And it's one that you can miss completely. And it's one of the best scenes in horror history. And also one of my favorites.
And last thing is my favorites. The 2 that I immediately always think of that scare the ever-loving out of me is Hereditary, which is a beautifully done movie of the slow build, where nothing happens for a very long time, and you know it's gonna. But then, like there's a scene where the camera pans over, and you can miss it because the color scheme is so good. But then, like the person that you thought was sneaking around and they disappeared, kind of, you realize they're in the corner, like up on the wall, and they just stay there for like a solid 2.5 minutes without moving. And it's one of those where you're like yelling at the TV, like change the camera angle, do something. But it's just like there. But the one that scares the crap out of me, like I'm getting goosebumps already, even though the rest of the movie doesn't really bother me, Signs. The first reveal of the alien in Signs, it's shot like my nightmares. Like it's a home camera. It's fixed. You can't move. You're yelling at the guy to move his head, and it's this long alleyway. You have nothing on either side, and then the alien walks across, and the sound the score does when the alien first reveals is like the sound right before you wake up from the nightmare. It scares the shite out of me every single time.
That's
I don't like horror movies. I don't watch them.
Can I tell Anne they can unmute now?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I can't do that in sign language.
You can unmute for real this time.
Oh, but yeah, no, I personally can't handle horror movies. I dislike it when people are dumb in them because I'm okay with some horror video games because I'm
More
being
than fair.
Because I'm the dumb guy.
yeah I'm controlling that. I'm being the dumb guy. But if I'm just looking at them saying, "Hello, Sophia's hair," it's just. I just don't like it when they're just being dumb. I also kind of don't like zombie movies because I keep thinking, but those were people once. Even
Yeah.
Shaun of the Dead still gets to me for some reason, even though it is a hilarious movie.
I think in terms of like scaring players, outside of like, acting it, giving them like the anxiety, like Jacob said, is one of my favorites to do. And I feel like the only two people who have like experienced it in full are Maltor and Revis.
Also, going back to the dumb guy, I've been a dumb guy in a Call of Cthulhu one shot. We were in some like farmhouse, and I was a mechanic, and I was like, "I'm gonna go fix things," and the group never went back to me. It's like, "Oh man, we're finding some of these occult signs. What are you doing?" Have they told me? No. I'm gonna go fix their generator. They said it was broken. Oh, they said the water pipe's leaking. I'm going to go over there.
Somebody's stealing my cows.
And it's only at the very end. It's like, I walk in, they're doing a blood sacrifice. Oh, wait a second. And then they do enough damage. There's some mechanic in there where if you do damage, roll con save or die. And I just straight up bit it.
I'm the opposite with movies because, like, it's just sort of like, yep, there you go. This is what you get. I tried to tell you. But with games, like, the thing that scares me is behind the door. My brain will not make me do it. It's like, I can't willingly scare myself. I'm just like, nope. I think Outlast 2.
Outlast 2.
Play Outlast.
Like, I can't handle Amnesia: The Dark Descent. Like, there's some games I just can't.
Let's go.
I feel like before, like, since we're kind of wrapping up, we should direct it to another question from the audience and Francesca.
Oh, but wait, you didn't want to say what your proudest moment was, Kurt? Best DM moment? Or best moment you've DM'd, just real quick?
I don't really have an answer to that. I asked the question without an answer. Because there's a lot of moments that I enjoy and moments that I am proud of. But I do not have one that I view as hands down the best. Because like I like Hooterson, I like the I like the dream sequence, I enjoy the end after Westing Dolls. And a lot of my like favorite moments that I can picture happening have yet to happen because I have done the DM thing of I have laid the groundwork, now I wait.
Also, I will say, not a favorite moment, but something that my high school group does is back in 3.5 when it was harder to crit, the DM made a scar chart. So every time someone crits, we now just ritualistically chant, scar chart, scar chart, scar chart. Even though we don't really bring it out for 5e, which is kind of understandable because crits are a lot more common. Everyone would look like just mummies at that point.
Yeah.
Or for some reason, everyone would. What was our running thing? It was always just hit the thigh. It's just always a thigh wound. Like, wow, your character looks fine, and then the pants come off. It's like, holy crap, your legs are like.
You could have stopped. You could have stopped the sentence there. Everybody looks fine, and the pants come off. Good night, everybody.
Sorry, during the beach episode, it's like, oh crap, your legs are so scarred. Oh, I'm self-conscious about that.
Audience, Francesca, do you have
scar chart's good stuff?
Any ending questions?
Yes. Any other questions?
Oh boy. Well, I mean, I did have one thing that I was thinking about, but it might be kind of a bit of a can of worms.
Just ask it.
It's us. It's always a can of worms.
Go for it.
True. Just ask it.
Gummy
Just
worms.
in terms of like answering since quickly or not.
Before I steal your thunder, yeah, when's our beach episode, Kurt?
Yeah, right? I was gonna ask. Right? Okay. We're getting on a boat.
I have to buy swim trunks.
You wait.
But beaches everywhere.
That's more clothing than you normally wear.
Fashion.
That's true. Yeah, no, my question was simply like, how do you deal with the NPCs?
That is
deal with them?
Well, how do you make them? How do you implement them? How do you make sure that they are like part of the party, quote unquote, but not too part of a party, quote unquote?
So DMPCs are one of the most dangerous tools that a DM has, because it is either like a method of telling a crazy story, can get out of hand super quickly, becomes a pick-me character, party hates them, party loves them too much, they are secretly like, there's so much that can happen, and you have to be very careful to make it so you are not the main character, essentially, because it is very, very easy for a DMPC to feel as if they have become the main character, and suddenly all of your players are just the supporting cast.
I don't know if I'm really bad at making DMPCs or if my players are just really good at choosing who to adopt. It's really frustrating. But they adopted Wager, who is like my go-to PC if I have to play like real quickly because I didn't play for years. And then just left him on the side of the road twice. Like they forgot about him and they're like, "Hey, where's Wager?" I'm like, "Did anybody wake him up? You guys left early." And they're like, meh. And I was like, somewhere Wager wakes up, hangs his head a little, and goes back, thinking he had friends.
And brings up a good point of making sure that you're not the main character. Like, that's kind of like the thing we touched on, but it's it's a very important fact that you have to hit 1 billion times.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think I'm the opposite of recency bias. My bias being my first DMPC was obviously the perfect one. Unfortunately, I'm kicking myself for not remembering his full name, but he's just we would just yell, "Father, we need healing," because we had no healer in our group of 6 people. So it was very much he designed a priest who was kind of tagging along. So very much we knew him, we liked him because he kept us alive. And we'd have to shout for him every time like combat happened near him and be like, "Oh, thank God, Father, please, we need you." So he was really good because he didn't take really any. Occasionally, we did like find his brother at some point. That was a good like, hey, we're helping out our friend here. We accidentally helped him out, but still, he was being involved with our shenanigans. But it wasn't him saying, "I need everyone to go rescue my brother because this is what I want to be done." It's like, yes, no, it's very much, "Father, we dragged you along. Oh, it's your brother. Oh, we got to deal with some trauma now, but still, it's your brother. We helped." And then, "Oh God, I have 10 health. Father, help!"
Father, help.
The worst play. That's what I'm thinking of. Also, like, to me at least, there's no time I get more self-conscious than when I'm a DM PC fighting monsters and I'm just playing D&D with myself, with there's 8 other people at the table. I'm like, "Sorry guys, I'm just fight me real quick. Okay, sorry, your turn." Yeah. But with NPCs, they are, at least the way I approach them is, they are everything else. You know, if I need to drive the story a little bit, that's kind of my way to do it. If I just need to add a little flavor, world building, that's what I do. It's also it satisfies the drama bitch in me, where I'm like, I've always wanted to do this kind of a character. Let me do this for about 2 minutes and move on with my life. You know, so it can be as important
until
or not.
They like him too much.
They
like him too much, and then he's forever.
That's a really good point, though, of using DMPCs to drive a plot. More because giving NPCs a class versus a DMPC is a very fine line.
Yes.
It's a very tough one to talk about, because literally it really does feel like you're just playing D&D by yourself, plus you have some friends here. Like,
which is
it's not entirely untrue, but it just really kind of goes back to the being careful of DMPCs and the power that they hold, because they really do hold a lot of power.
I don't think I haven't made any DMPCs actually. A lot of the time it's well, it's more like I make NPCs and then occasionally they get swallowed up by the group.
I have
Pokemon
NPCs that have like classes, but
Or in like the Pokemon game, everyone had personalities, but that's only because someone chose to be an empath. So every time they wanted to reason with the Pokemon, I'd be like, well, they have a family. It's like every time it's like, well, you're taking them away from their family. How can you sweeten the deal for them? Or so everyone had to have every one of his Pokemon had to have a personality, and usually had to, and then ended up being, I'll bring the whole family along. It's like, shit, no, he doesn't need more, but okay, fine.
You mentioned a second ago. That's a good safeguard for me with DM NPCs, because I tend to just naturally kind of rely. I love characters, and just in general, it's my favorite part of the game is making characters, and I don't give them classes, because if I do, I feel like I'm kind of shoehorning myself. And my dog is dreaming. I give them like 2 or 3 abilities, and that's about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so like they might do something and go, oh, it's a Battle Master fighter. And it's like, no, he's just got like 2 of those. So that way they're important, they help, but the party's not like necessarily interested in keeping them alive. Like, oh, okay, yeah, we got you to the town. Run, go.
Flee.
But my players just abandon everyone, which is fine.
Yeah.
Assholes.
Also, occasionally I forgot I didn't make this, but I was part of his conception. Is we have running jokes at NPCs. So kind of like your guy, we have Greg. He is always negatively affected by anything we're doing, and half the time he's homeless or he's about to get a job, and then that building we were in that just fell was where he was about to be employed. Or
My cabbages.
I don't think I have a character like that, actually.
He's basically the cabbage guy, but not always with the cabbage cart. He's just always in an unfortunate situation, no matter the campaign, no matter what world. He's a universal constant, to the point where when they were trying to find the god guy, they had to find a Greg who was a Greg amalgamation,
Greg
who was
Prime.
Greg. I think he was Greg Prime, and he was too successful, to the point where the bad guy noticed him and like, oh, you're gonna be a problem. Let's banish you to the astral plane.
Kind of like a Wolf Spider in the Spider-Man multiverse. He is the only evil Spider-Man. Because the sense of heroism is too powerful.
I mean, there's Spiders Man.
I do hate Spiders Man.
Spiders Man is a great character when he's asking how people might taste.
But he's not inherently evil.
No, he's
just Wolf Spider is the only 100% evil Spider-Man.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And on that note,
I mean, we have time for maybe one more question.
I just thought it was funny.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You got one more, Francesca?
Yeah, we're all looking to you, obviously. No,
yeah, chat. Do you have one?
Not off the top of my head, personally.
If chat doesn't come up with one in a little bit here, I do have one other one, just as a DM to DM thing.
That might be a reasonable one, considering it's almost, well, for me on the East Coast, for us, it's almost midnight. So
yeah, for me, it's almost 11.
All right,
go. Okay,
go
do the thing.
So I am notoriously bad at taking notes and prepping.
Prepping.
That answers my question. All right, we're done.
No. Am I the most prepping DM here?
Depends. Campaign for encounters, I got everything. I got my stat blocks, got my tokens, got my map. That's all there. Usually my notes for the day, the more I go on, the less smaller the notes gets, to where it's a couple bullet points of they might do these couple things. Okay. Here's names. Here's a town and people in town.
As long as I'm present, so I don't DM regularly.
I do. Once I get started, I'm really good at it. I just, I sometimes rely on my improv skills a little too much, but.
And yeah, the party's going to go left anyway.
Yeah,
that's it. That's true. I've lost so many hours. Spider, if you're watching, fuck you to eternal hells. He's the guy who does that. He's like, well, I'm gonna punch through this wall and go that way. Like, okay, here we go. And it's always the thing I've spent 6 hours creating. So there's a nice little barrier of too much prep, but I like building stuff. I like encounters are kind of my weakest thing. I'm still really bad at balancing them, and I kind of just improvise them sometimes.
Balancing
And-
encounters.
You get a sense of it after a point, and if
Yeah.
anything, it's just, oh no, more things showed up if it's not that interesting.
I try to build my encounters around concepts more than monsters. Like, oh, this person like manipulates the map. Oh, this person's really gonna you guys can't stay. You guys have to be within 15 feet of each other. Yeah, things like that. Again, I've been DMing overpowered characters for 2 years, so like killing them is not necessarily always an option.
Always have ads though. That's an important lesson. Always have ads. Always
Learned
have
that
little
the hard
creatures. Yeah,
You
never.
learned it the hard way. You never.
Yeah, there's always the guy where it's like, oh man, action economy. Whatever. I got one big boss. He's got good big attacks. They'll scare them, and they get to attack like 12 times before he gets to do his one thing.
And I can't tell who you're calling out with that.
It's you,
It's me. What?
Georgia.
Oh,
DMing
yeah,
is fun.
that's right. I forgot about that.
I didn't. I died.
No, I meant the cut your HP in half.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, honestly, if I had to summarize DMing in one sentence, it's what you just said, Kurt. You learn it the hard way.
Yeah.
Like, go fail. That's how you do it. Get better
honestly,
at it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's a lot of things that you hear people talk about, but you don't really learn it until you've experienced it.
Yeah.
For me, like the biggest one was the ads. Like, always have ads. I learned that the hard way. Does that mean
summarize that for people who don't know what that is?
Oh yeah, sorry.
Sorry.
Having ads or additional damages or
More mooks or
more mooks.
little guys.
It's have trash mobs to
Minions.
throw at people.
Minions, yes.
Yeah, have like minions.
Not
trash,
the minions, but minions.
Have mobs, minions, trash mobs to throw at people. That like their whole purpose is there to kind of die and suck up resources.
Or at the very least take an action to do. Because I mentioned action economy. When your guy can only attack once, sure, he might delete half their health if he hits, but then the players get 1 to 2 attacks per person, and if he's the only target, he's going to have to soak a lot of damage.
Yeah,
it's basically the concept.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, at that point, it basically becomes like, damage sponge, and this creature just has an absurd amount of HP for absolutely no reason.
Right. It's the old concept of. It's basically taking the original concept from the older D&D games of, the dungeon is the real enemy, not the final boss. Like, it wears you down to where the final boss is so difficult.
Mm-hmm.
It's that same logic, just in real time in one room of like, okay, sure, 6-on-1 you might be able to fight this guy, but you fail one Constitution save and Jim Bob McSnakeface over there's got you paralyzed 2 turns.
Yep.
So yeah, go fail, listen to your players, have fun.
I'll say it can be fun in reverse though. When
oh yes,
I was going to say I forgot another ingenious moment I had where the players had a collective hallucination, but more or less they were watching something that happened in the past, which was one god getting being charged by armies of mooks as they're fought down before the king of another country's like, all right, I'm gonna go kill your god. So I was like, all right, so each of you has an action, and so this one guy can act 4 times, and here's a wave of enemies. So it's like, it was fun for them, because like, oh man, I roll. Wait, he rolls how many dice? Wait, he crits on a what now? On a 18 to 20 and a 5e? What are you? And so they got to have a lot of fun of just like, I crit. That guy's dead. That guy's dead. Ooh, I got that whole area of people gone. Another wave comes in. Oh man, just keep going. It was just a fun thing to have them occasionally just do something different, break up the doldrum of. I mean, it's not doldrum of your characters, your party, but the expected. Yeah, it's the unexpected of you get a new thing, a new toy, even just for a little bit. Mm-hmm. But yes, learn from your mistakes. Also experiment.
Yeah, just go at it.
Oh yeah.
Try and fail.
Don't be afraid. And if your players are actually brave enough to come up to you and say, "Hey, I liked that," or "Hey, I didn't quite like that," appreciate them. appreciate them and
Yes.
embrace them forever if they actually give you feedback.
Listen to them.
Listen to them,
This is why I ask for feedback after like every session.
and we're
Without-
never going to give you it. No, I'm kidding.
If you don't have any players, you're just some asshole who never wrote a book. So you need players.
Yeah.
Be nice to them. They're good people, mostly.
Any last words?
Chrysanthemum. It's usually a
Fuck
good
around
last
and
one.
find out.
Fuck around, find out, chrysanthemum.
Oh, but yes. It was fun. This was still fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
And next week, what do we have in store?
Death, most likely.
Let's see.
Lots of travel.
That's pretty much the same thing.
Good, good.
3 full pages of prep.
Woo!
That's a threat.
That's a threat.
Oh no.
Anyways, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you all had a wonderful time. And a promise, yes. Thank you all. Yes. Thank you all for joining us. I hope you had a wonderful time. Thank you everyone for sharing your DM experience and questions and such.
See you all next time.
See you next week.
Same bad channel.
Bye.
Same play time. Yes.